The wedding dress hung like a ghost in the corner of her room. In less than 12 hours, Eliza Thornfield would walk down the aisle of London's grandest cathedral and marry a man who didn't love her. She knew this now, had heard it from his own lips just hours ago, spoken carelessly to another woman in a darkened hallway. Not just any woman, her cousin. The betrayal should have destroyed her. Instead, it ignited something dangerous. She stood at her window, watching the pre-dawn fog roll through Mayfair's pristine streets, and made a decision that would shatter everything. If you want to see how far one woman will go to reclaim her life, stay with me until the very end. And when you do, hit that like button and comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The clock in the hallway struck 4 in the morning with its usual arrogance, each chime a reminder that time, like everything else in the Thornfield household, moved according to someone else's design. Eliza pressed her forehead against the cold glass of her bedroom window and watched her breath fog the pane. Below, the garden stretched out in meticulous rows, each hedge trimmed to identical height, each flower bed arranged in patterns approved by her mother 3 seasons ago. Nothing grew wild here. Nothing was permitted to. "You're awake." She didn't turn around. Her sister Catherine's voice carried that particular quality of concern that made Eliza's jaw tighten. "Couldn't sleep." "Nerves. Perfectly natural." Catherine moved into the room with the practiced silence of someone who'd spent a lifetime tiptoeing around their mother's moods. "Every bride feels this way the night before." "Do they?" Eliza finally turned from the window. Her sister stood there in her dressing gown, hair in perfect pin curls despite the hour. Catherine had been preparing for her own wedding for the past 6 months, a respectable match to a banker's son. Sensible. Safe. Everything a proper marriage should be. "The Duke of Ashford is a remarkable catch," Catherine continued, settling onto the edge of Eliza's bed. "Mother says half the eligible women in London would trade places with you in an instant." "Then perhaps one of them should." The words came out sharper than intended. Catherine blinked, her practiced composure slipping for just a moment. "Eliza, you're not having second thoughts. Not now. Not after everything—" "Everything Father sacrificed to arrange this marriage?" Eliza finished. "Everything Mother orchestrated to ensure the Thornfield name would be attached to a dukedom? I'm aware of the investment, Catherine. I've been reminded of it every day for the past year." Catherine stood, smoothing her dressing gown with hands that trembled slightly. "That's unfair. This marriage will secure all our futures, William's business ventures, my own prospects, even the cousins." "I know." Eliza cut her off, suddenly exhausted. "I'm sorry, I need some air." "At 4 in the morning? The wedding isn't until noon. I have time." Catherine hesitated at the door, her face caught between duty and something that might have been sympathy. "He's a good man, Eliza. The Duke. You'll be happy. You'll see." After her sister left, Eliza returned to the window. A good man. She'd heard those words so many times they'd lost all meaning. Duke Edmund Ashford was 42, twice widowed, and possessed of a fortune that made even old banking families bow and scrape. He was also, according to every matron in London, devastatingly handsome and remarkably well-mannered. She'd met him exactly 7 times before their engagement was announced. The memory surfaced unbidden. Last night's ball, the one her mother had insisted on as a final celebration before the wedding. Eliza had been searching for the powder room when she'd taken a wrong turn down the east corridor of Lord Pemberton's townhouse. The hallway had been dark, lit only by a single gas lamp at the far end. That's when she'd heard them. "Can't keep doing this, Edmund. After tomorrow, everything changes." Eliza had frozen, recognizing the voice immediately. Her cousin Vivienne. Beautiful, charming Vivienne, who'd arrived from Bath 3 months ago and quickly become a fixture in London society. "Nothing changes." The Duke's voice, low and intimate in a way Eliza had never heard directed at her. "The marriage is a business arrangement. Surely you understand that. The Thornfields need the connection. I need an heir, and Eliza is suitable." "Suitable?" Vivian's laugh had been bitter. "You make her sound like a piece of furniture." "Don't be dramatic. She'll have everything a woman could want: title, wealth, position, and we'll have each other, just as we always have." "And she'll never know?" "Why would she? Eliza is the perfect choice precisely because she won't ask questions. She's been trained her entire life to be ornamental and agreeable. Tomorrow I marry respectability itself." Eliza had stood there in the darkness, her white ball gown suddenly feeling like a shroud. and listened to the man she was supposed to marry describe her like a transaction in a ledger book. Suitable, ornamental, agreeable. The worst part wasn't even the casual cruelty of his assessment, it was how accurate it was. She'd spent 23 years becoming exactly what they described, a woman who smiled at the right moments, agreed with the right opinions, and never, ever caused a scene. Her mother had shaped her as carefully as she shaped those garden hedges, trimming away anything wild or unpredictable until only the acceptable parts remained. And Vivienne. Sweet cousin Vivienne, who'd shared her dressing room just hours ago, helping her select jewelry for the wedding, offering advice on married life with a smile that now felt like a blade. The sound of footsteps in the corridor brought Eliza back to the present. Her maid, most likely, coming to begin the lengthy process of transformation that would turn her from woman to bride. She moved away from the window. The wedding dress waited on its stand, layers of Belgian lace and silk organza that had cost more than most families earned in a year. Her mother had commissioned it from a French designer, insisted on 7 fittings to ensure perfection. When Eliza had first seen it complete, she'd felt nothing. Now, looking at it in the pre-dawn light, it looked like a beautiful cage. A knock at the door. "Miss Eliza, I've brought your tea." "Come in, Mary." The maid entered, a tray balanced carefully in her hands. She was young, perhaps 18, and had been with the family only 6 months. Unlike the older servants who'd learned to maintain careful neutrality, Mary's face still showed everything she felt. Right now, she looked worried. "You've been up all night, miss?" "Couldn't sleep." Eliza took the tea, grateful for something to do with her hands. Bride's nerves, apparently. Mary busied herself opening the curtains, letting in the gray morning light. "My sister married last year, said she didn't sleep for 3 days before the wedding. But she and Tom, they'd known each other since they were children. She said it helped, marrying someone familiar." The implication hung in the air. Eliza had met the Duke exactly 7 times. "The Duke is very distinguished," Eliza offered, the words automatic. "Oh yes, miss. Very distinguished." Mary's tone was carefully neutral, but her hands twisted in her apron. "Miss, if I may say something not quite proper?" Eliza looked up, surprised. "Go ahead." "My mom always said that a woman's got to trust her gut about things, and if your gut is saying something ain't right..." Mary trailed off, clearly reaching the limits of what she dared say to her employer's daughter. "Well, I just hope you're happy, miss, that's all. I hope you're truly happy." "Thank you, Mary." After the maid left, Eliza sat with the tea growing cold in her hands. Trust your gut. Such simple advice. But what did it mean when your gut was screaming one thing, and your entire life had been designed to make you ignore it? The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Her mother arrived at 6, already dressed and armored in her finest day gown, directing servants like a general marshalling troops. The house filled with people, hairdressers, the dressmaker for final adjustments, aunts and cousins arriving to help with preparations. Vivienne came at 8, beautiful in pale pink, her face arranged in an expression of excited support that made Eliza's stomach turn. "Oh, Eliza!" She swept into the room like she owned it. "This is it. Your big day. How are you feeling?" "Overwhelmed," Eliza said honestly, watching her cousin in the mirror as the hairdresser worked on her updo. "That's perfectly natural, but by tonight you'll be the Duchess of Ashford. Can you imagine? Everyone in London will envy you." "Will they?" Something flickered in Vivienne's eyes, too quick to identify. "Of course they will. You're getting everything a woman could possibly want. Everything except honesty. Everything except choice. Everything except a husband who actually wanted her, rather than her family's connections, and her ability to be ornamental and agreeable." "Vivienne," Eliza kept her voice level, meeting her cousin's eyes in the mirror. "Are you happy for me?" "What a strange question." Vivienne laughed, but it sounded forced. "Of course I'm happy for you. You're my favorite cousin." "And the Duke? Do you think he'll make me happy?" For just a moment, Vivienne's mask slipped. Guilt flickered across her features before she could hide it. I think the Duke is exactly what he appears to be. A practical man making a practical match. Whether that makes you happy is something only you can answer." It was possibly the most honest thing Vivienne had said to her in months. "Thank you for your honesty." Vivienne's face hardened. "You're welcome. Now we should focus on getting you ready. The carriages arrive in 3 hours." At 10 o'clock, Eliza stood in her completed wedding ensemble and looked at herself in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, beautiful, polished, perfect. Everything a duchess should be, nothing like who she actually was. Her mother stood behind her, hands clasped in satisfaction. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. You'll be the most beautiful bride London has seen in a decade. Mother, Eliza's voice sounded distant to her own ears. Did you love father when you married him? Lady Thornfield's expression didn't change, but something in her posture stiffened. What a peculiar question, especially now. I'm curious. Love is a luxury, Eliza. Marriage is a necessity. I performed my duty, gave your father heirs, managed his household, and supported his position in society. In return, I have security and status. That is the arrangement we make. And are you happy? Her mother's laugh was sharp as glass. Happy? What does happiness have to do with anything? I'm respected. I'm comfortable. I've ensured my children have futures. That's considerably more valuable than some fleeting emotion that poets make such a fuss about. Right. Eliza turned back to the mirror. Of course. Eliza. Her mother's voice softened fractionally. I know this feels daunting, but you're doing the right thing, for all of us. Your father's investments have not gone as well as hoped. This marriage secures everything. Surely you understand that. I understand perfectly. Lady Thornfield patted her shoulder once awkwardly, before leaving to check on other preparations. Eliza remained in front of the mirror watching light play across the elaborate beadwork of her dress. The right thing, duty, necessity. The same words her entire life, repeated until they became truth. At 11, her father came to escort her to the carriage. Lord Thornfield was a quiet man who spent most of his time in his study, dealing with business matters that Eliza wasn't supposed to understand but did anyway. Their family fortune, built on shipping and trade, had been hemorrhaging money for the past 5 years. Bad investments, economic downturns, and her father's inability to adapt to changing markets had brought them to the edge of ruin. This marriage was their salvation. You look beautiful, my dear, her father said, offering his arm. Thank you, father. They descended the stairs in silence. The household staff lined up to see her off, their faces professionally neutral. Only Mary, standing at the back, looked sad. The carriage waited outside, decorated with white roses and ribbons. A crowd had gathered on the street, neighbors and curious onlookers hoping to glimpse the bride. Eliza smiled and waved as she'd been taught, playing her part perfectly. The ride to the cathedral should have taken 20 minutes. They'd gone perhaps 5 blocks when Eliza spoke. Father, stop the carriage. Lord Thornfield looked startled. What? We can't be late, Eliza. The Duke. Stop the carriage, please. Something in her voice must have convinced him. He rapped on the roof and the driver pulled to a halt. They sat there on a random street corner in Mayfair, the wedding carriage idling while pedestrians stared. Eliza, what's wrong? She looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw a tired man who'd made a series of poor choices and now needed his daughter to fix them. He wasn't evil, he was weak, and she'd been raised to compensate for that weakness with her own obedience. Do you know why the Duke wants to marry me? Her father blinked. Because you're a Thornfield. Because you're beautiful and accomplished and will make an excellent duchess. He wants to marry me because I'm suitable, because I won't ask questions or cause problems, because I've been trained to be ornamental. Eliza, I don't understand. He's in love with Vivienne, has been for some time, apparently. They plan to continue their relationship after we're married. I'm just the respectable front for a dukedom that needs an heir. The color drained from her father's face. How do you... Who told you this? I overheard them last night at the ball. They were quite clear about the arrangement. Lord Thornfield was quiet for a long moment. Then, I see. That's all? You see? Eliza. He took her hands, his grip surprisingly strong. Listen to me. What you overheard is unfortunate, but it doesn't change the fundamental situation. This marriage must happen. Our family depends on it. Your brother's future, your sister's prospects, our entire household. I know. Then you understand that personal feelings, however hurt, must be secondary to... I understand that you're asking me to marry a man who views me as a transaction, to spend my entire life being suitable and ornamental while he conducts an affair with my own cousin under my roof. It's not ideal. It's a prison, father. He pulled back, his face hardening. You're being dramatic. Many marriages operate under similar circumstances. The Duke will provide for you. You'll have children, status, security. These are not small things. They're also not love, or respect, or basic honesty. Love? Her father's voice rose. You want to throw away everything. Everything. We've worked for because some romantic notion. Eliza, I thought you were more sensible than this. Sensible. The word tasted bitter. Like being suitable. Like being ornamental. Yes. He was losing his composure now, fear making him sharp. Exactly like that. Do you think your mother married for love? Do you think any woman of our class has that luxury? You have a duty to save you from your own poor decisions? The words hung between them like a slap. Lord Thornfield's face went white, then red. How dare you? How dare I? Eliza felt something breaking loose inside her, some carefully maintained wall crumbling. You gambled away our security. You made bad investments, trusted the wrong people, and now you expect me to fix it by selling myself to a man who doesn't even pretend to care about me. And I'm the one who needs to be sensible? Eliza. No. She cut him off, her voice suddenly calm. I'm done being sensible. I'm done being suitable. Tell the Duke the wedding is off. Don't be ridiculous. We're 10 minutes from the cathedral. Everyone is waiting. Then they can wait longer. Or you can tell them the truth, that the bride has changed her mind. Her father's face went through several colors. You'll destroy us. Completely. The scandal alone will be terrible. I know, but it will be temporary. Scandal always is. What won't be temporary is marrying a man who sees me as furniture. Eliza, please. Her father's voice cracked. Please don't do this. I'm begging you. As your father, as my father, you should want better for me. She reached for the carriage door. Her father grabbed her arm. If you walk away now, you'll have nothing. No prospects, no future. No one will have you. Then I'll have nothing, but at least it will be mine. She wrenched open the door and stepped out onto the street. The crowd that had gathered to watch the bridal carriage gasped. Eliza stood there in her elaborate wedding dress, looking up at her father's stricken face. I'm sorry, she said. I truly am, but I can't do this. Eliza. She turned and walked away. Behind her, she heard her father calling her name, heard the confusion of the crowd, heard the beginning of the scandal that would consume her family for months to come. She didn't look back. She walked for 3 blocks before her mind caught up with her actions. She was in Mayfair, in a wedding dress, without money or any clear destination. Everyone was staring. A few people pointed and whispered. The panic started to set in. What had she done? Where could she possibly go? Her father was right. She had no prospects, no skills, nothing beyond her name and family connections. And she'd just destroyed both of those in a single impulsive decision. She was standing on a corner, trying not to hyperventilate in her corset, when a familiar voice spoke behind her. Miss Thornfield? Eliza. She turned to find a man standing beside a plain black carriage, his expression somewhere between shocked and concerned. It took her a moment to place him. Rowan Blackmore. She'd met him once, perhaps twice, at social functions. A minor nobleman who kept mostly to himself owned some estate on the coast that he rarely left. Mr. Blackmore, is everything all right? You appear to be... He gestured vaguely at her wedding dress, clearly uncertain how to phrase it. Running away from my own wedding? Eliza laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged even to her own ears. Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. To his credit, Rowan Blackmore didn't immediately flee or try to summon her family. He simply studied her for a moment, then said, I see. And where are you running to? I have absolutely no idea. He nodded slowly. That does complicate things. May I offer you a ride somewhere? At the very least, you might want to get off the street before the gossip mills start turning. I think they're already turning. Fair point. He opened the carriage door still. A ride to anywhere might be preferable to standing here in full bridal attire while all of London watches. Eliza looked at the open carriage door, then back down the street toward where she'd left her father. She could still go back, apologize, claim temporary madness, marry the Duke and save her family's reputation, spend the rest of her life being suitable. She climbed into the carriage. Rowan followed, settling across from her and rapping on the roof. Drive. Anywhere quiet. As the carriage pulled away, Eliza felt the adrenaline start to fade, replaced by the full weight of what she'd just done. Her hands started to shake. I've just destroyed my entire family, she said quietly. Perhaps. Rowan's voice was matter-of-fact. Or perhaps you've just saved yourself from a disastrous marriage. Time will tell which interpretation society settles on. My father will never forgive me. My mother will be mortified. My siblings... She stopped, pressing a hand to her mouth. What have I done? Exercised agency over your own life, apparently, which, from what I understand of your situation, is not something the Duke would have permitted. She looked at him sharply. You know about Edmund, about the arrangement. I know the Duke of Ashford's reputation, which is why I've made it a point to avoid his circle. Rowan shrugged. I also couldn't help but notice him at Lord Pemberton's ball last night, with your cousin, in what appeared to be an intimate conversation. You saw them? It was difficult to miss. They weren't being particularly discreet. He paused. I assume that's what prompted this dramatic exit? Eliza nodded, not trusting her voice. Then you made the right choice, whatever the cost. You say that like it's simple. It's not simple, it's merely correct. There's a difference. The carriage hit a bump, and Rowan steadied himself against the wall. Miss Thornfield, I don't know you well, but I know enough to recognize that marrying a man who views you as a convenient prop would have slowly destroyed whatever spirit you possess. Better a clean break now than years of slow suffocation. That's easy for you to say. You're a man. You have options. Some. But I also know what it's like to be trapped in a life others designed for you. He met her eyes. I inherited my estate at 20. Everyone had plans for it. For me. Investments I should make, political connections I should cultivate, the proper wife I should marry to produce heirs. I tried to be what they wanted for exactly 2 years. Then I realized I was disappearing into someone else's vision of my life. So what did you do? I left London, permanently, moved to my coastal estate and built a life I could actually live with. Society called it eccentric. My family called it irresponsible. I called it necessary. The carriage had been driving aimlessly through London streets, but now it slowed. They'd reached Hyde Park, empty at this hour, peaceful. Where can I take you? Rowan asked gently. Do you have family you can trust? Friends? Eliza tried to think. Catherine would side with their parents. Her aunts would be horrified. Friends from society would shun her immediately, scandal being contagious in their world. Vivian was obviously not an option. I have no one, she said quietly. I've just realized I have literally no one. Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then, you have one option, though it's irregular and I'll understand if you refuse. What? My estate, Blackmore Hall. It's on the coast in Cornwall. Remote, quiet, and far enough from London that scandal travels slowly. He held up a hand before she could respond. I'm not proposing anything improper. The house is large enough that we'd rarely see each other. You'd have complete privacy, time to think, to decide what you want to do next. No one would know you were there. You're offering me refuge? A man I barely know? I'm offering you time and space, which seem to be the two things you need most right now. He leaned back, his expression carefully neutral. But I understand if you'd rather find another solution. This is highly irregular, and your reputation, my reputation is already destroyed, the moment I walked out of that carriage. Eliza looked down at her wedding dress, at the fortune in fabric and lace that now represented nothing but a life she'd rejected. Why would you do this? Help me. Because someone should. And because... He hesitated. Because I watched you at social functions. Always perfect, always proper, always saying exactly what was expected. It was like watching a brilliant actress play a role she hated. And then last night at the ball, I saw your face when you came out of that hallway. You looked shattered. I felt that kind of shattered. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Eliza felt tears threatening. She fought them back. She'd spent her whole life learning not to cry in public. If I go with you, there's no coming back from this. Society will assume the worst. They'll assume the worst regardless. At least this way you'll have time to recover before facing whatever comes next. She thought about her alternatives. Return home to her family's fury and eventual forced marriage to someone equally unsuitable. Throw herself on the mercy of distant relatives who would see her as a burden. Try to find work. Though with no skills and a ruined reputation, her options would be severely limited. Or accept this strange offer from a man who barely knew her but seemed to understand exactly what she was running from. All right, she said. Take me to Cornwall. Rowan nodded once, then rapped on the carriage roof. Paddington Station, and quickly. As they drove through London's streets, Eliza watched the city pass by. The place that had been her entire world, now somewhere she was fleeing. Her wedding was supposed to start in 20 minutes. The cathedral would be full, the Duke would be waiting. Her family would be frantic. She felt terrified. She felt reckless. She felt, for the first time in her life, completely free. The price of that freedom would be steep. She understood that. Everything she'd been raised to value, reputation, position, family approval, was gone. Burned away in one impulsive decision on a street corner in Mayfair, but as the carriage rattled toward the station, Eliza found she couldn't regret it. Whatever came next, it would be hers, her choice, her life, even if she had no idea what that life would look like. The train lurched forward, and Eliza gripped the edge of the seat to steady herself. Through the window, London blurred into a smear of gray buildings and smoke-stained sky. Every mile that passed felt like another thread severing, connecting her to the life she'd known, the person she'd been expected to be. Rowan sat across from her in the private compartment he'd purchased without hesitation, his expression unreadable as he pretended to study the passing landscape. He'd said nothing since they'd boarded, giving her space to process what she'd done. The silence should have been awkward. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing that had happened to her in months. She was still wearing the wedding dress. People had stared at the station, a bride in full regalia climbing onto a train with a man who was clearly not her groom. The scandal would be in every drawing room by evening. Her mother would be inconsolable. Her father would be ruined. She waited for the guilt to crush her. It didn't come. "You're not having second thoughts?" Rowan said quietly. Not a question. "I should be, shouldn't I?" Eliza looked down at her hands, still gloved in white silk. "A decent person would feel terrible right now. A decent person just escaped a marriage to a man who planned to humiliate her for the rest of her life." He leaned forward slightly. "Miss Thornfield, you're allowed to feel relieved." "I don't feel relieved. I feel—" She searched for the word. "Empty. Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long that now it's gone. I don't know how to stand upright." "That feeling will pass. Eventually you'll remember what it's like to breathe without weight on your chest." She studied him properly for the first time. Rowan Blackmore was perhaps 30, with dark hair that needed cutting and gray eyes that seemed to notice everything. He dressed simply, no flashy waistcoats or ornate cravats like the men in London society. His hands had calluses she'd noticed when he'd helped her into the carriage. A gentleman who actually worked. How unusual. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "I told you. You told me a story about seeing me look shattered at a ball. That's not a reason to upend your entire life to help a stranger." Rowan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "My sister was engaged once. To a marquis who seemed perfect on paper. Wealthy, titled, charming. She was 19 and believed everything he told her." He paused. 2 weeks before the wedding, she discovered he'd been involved with her best friend for months. The arrangement was similar to yours. A respectable wife for appearances, a mistress for affection. "What did she do?" "She told our parents. They said to proceed anyway. That these arrangements were normal, that she was being childish to expect fidelity. So she married him." His jaw tightened. "She lasted 3 years before she couldn't stand it anymore. Took her own life in the lake at their estate." Eliza felt the breath leave her lungs. "I'm so sorry. I was away when it happened. At university, studying architecture because that's what second sons do, find respectable hobbies while the heir manages the estate. By the time I got home, she was already buried. My parents never spoke of it. The official story was an accident, a tragic slip on wet stones." "But you knew." "I found her diary. She'd written everything, the affairs, the humiliation, the way she slowly disappeared into the role she was playing until there was nothing left." He met Eliza's eyes. "When I saw you last night, you had that same look. Like you were already vanishing." The train rattled over a junction, swaying hard enough that Eliza had to grip the seat again. Outside, the city was giving way to smaller towns, then countryside. "So you decided to rescue me? Like you couldn't rescue her?" "I decided to offer you a choice. What you do with it is entirely up to you." They fell into silence again. Eliza watched the landscape change, green fields replacing gray buildings, the sky opening up in a way it never did in London. She'd never been to Cornwall, barely been outside London except for one summer at her aunt's estate in Hampshire when she was 12. "What's Blackmore Hall like?" she asked. "Isolated. The nearest village is 4 miles away. The house sits on a cliff overlooking the sea. He seemed to choose his words carefully. It's not fashionable. No ballrooms or formal gardens, but it's quiet. And the ocean, there's something honest about it. It doesn't pretend to be anything except what it is. That sounds perfect. A knock at the compartment door made them both tense. Rowan opened it to reveal the conductor, who idolized his wedding dress with poorly concealed curiosity. "Tickets, sir." Rowan handed them over. The conductor examined them, then glanced at Eliza again. "Will the lady require any refreshments? We have tea service in the dining car." "We're fine, thank you." After the conductor left, Eliza laughed, a sharp, slightly hysterical sound. "He thinks we're eloping." "Let him think it. Better than the truth, which is complicated enough to give anyone a headache." "The truth." Eliza pulled off her gloves, finger by finger. "The truth is, I've run away from my wedding to hide in a stranger's house while my family implodes and London society tears my reputation to pieces. And I'm sitting here in a train compartment feeling more alive than I have in years. Is that so terrible?" "It should be, shouldn't it? Feeling happy while causing so much pain? You're not causing the pain, you're refusing to absorb it anymore." Rowan stood, moving to the window. "Your family made their choices. Arranged a marriage for their benefit, not yours. The Duke made his choice, to pursue a relationship with your cousin while using you as respectable cover. Even your cousin made her choice. You're the only one who wasn't allowed to choose until today. My mother would say that's the price of being a woman in our position, that sacrifice is expected. Your mother can believe what she likes. Doesn't make it true." The train stopped at a small station, Eliza didn't catch the name, and a handful of passengers boarded. She heard voices in the corridor, footsteps passing their compartment. The conductor's voice rose above the others, and she caught fragments of conversation. "Bride on board, can you believe it? Jilted at the altar, heard it from Duke of Ashford. Absolutely scandal." Eliza felt her face burn. Rowan moved to close the compartment door fully, muffling the voices. "News travels fast," she said quietly. "Telegraph from London to the stations. Someone at Paddington must have sent word." He settled back into his seat. "By tomorrow, every newspaper in England will have the story." "They'll crucify me." "Probably. But you'll be in Cornwall, where newspapers arrive 3 days late and no one cares much about London gossip anyway." The train lurched forward again, picking up speed. Eliza closed her eyes, imagining her mother opening the morning paper over breakfast, reading about her daughter's spectacular social suicide. Catherine would be mortified, her own prospects damaged by association. Her father would probably lock himself in his study with a bottle of brandy. And the Duke? What would Edmund do when he arrived at an empty cathedral? "He'll be furious," she said aloud. The Duke? Undoubtedly. Not just angry, humiliated. Men like him don't handle humiliation well. Rowan's expression darkened. Men like him shouldn't have the luxury of maintaining their dignity while destroying someone else's life. If he's humiliated, good. You really don't like him. "I don't like bullies, or men who treat women as property." He paused. "I met the Duke once, at a hunting party. He spent the entire weekend boasting about his first wife, how obedient she'd been, how she'd never questioned his decisions. She died in childbirth. The way he talked about her, like she'd fulfilled her function and was now conveniently out of the way." He shook his head. "I left early." Eliza thought about the future she'd escaped. Years of quiet obedience, producing heirs, looking the other way while Edmund conducted his affairs. Growing old in a beautiful house that felt like a mausoleum, pretending not to notice when Vivian visited for extended stays. "His second wife," she said. "What happened to her?" "Fell down the stairs, broke her neck. The investigation ruled it an accident, but there were rumors." "What kind of rumors?" "That she'd threatened to leave him. That there had been an argument." Rowan held up a hand. "Just rumors. Nothing proven. But enough to make me wonder." The compartment suddenly felt smaller. Eliza stood, pacing the narrow space between seats. "You think he might have—" "I think the Duke of Ashford is a dangerous man who doesn't like losing control. And I think you made the right choice walking away from him." Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. They'd been traveling for hours. Eliza's feet hurt in the impractical wedding shoes. The corset felt like it was crushing her ribs. She wanted out of this dress, out of this costume of a life she'd rejected. "How much longer?" she asked. We'll arrive in Truro around 10, then another hour by carriage to Blackmore Hall. So midnight before we arrive. Roughly. Are you hungry? We should probably eat something. Eliza realized she hadn't eaten since yesterday evening. The wedding breakfast had been planned for after the ceremony, a lavish affair her mother had been organizing for months. All that food, all those guests, all waiting for a bride who never arrived. I couldn't eat. You should try. It's going to be a long night. They made their way to the dining car, Eliza acutely aware of the stares that followed them. A bride and a man, traveling alone, unwed. The scandal was so obvious it was almost funny. She kept her chin up, refusing to show shame. The waiter seated them at a small table, his professional mask slipping for just a moment when he took in her wedding dress. Will Madam be dining in her traveling attire? Madam had an unexpected change of plans, Eliza said coolly. The dress came along for the ride. To her surprise, the waiter smiled. I understand completely, madam. Might I recommend the roasted chicken? It's quite good. They ordered, and Eliza forced herself to eat despite the knot in her stomach. Around them, other passengers tried not to stare while clearly desperate to hear their conversation. She could see them straining to listen, filing away details to share later. Let them look, Rowan said quietly. In 2 days, we'll be in Cornwall, and they'll still be riding trains, gossiping about other people's lives because their own are too boring to sustain interest. You're very philosophical about scandal. I've been the subject of it before. You develop immunity. What did you do? Refused to marry this woman my parents selected, moved to Cornwall permanently, took up painting instead of politics. He shrugged. Individually, none of it was particularly shocking. Combined, it made me eccentric enough to be interesting dinner conversation for about 6 months. And then? Someone else did something more interesting, and I was forgotten. That's how it works. Scandal is currency, but it devalues quickly. Eliza wanted to believe him, but she suspected her situation was different. Running from your own wedding wasn't garden variety eccentricity. It was a direct challenge to the social order, to the expectation that women would accept whatever marriages were arranged for them. They finished eating as darkness fell completely. The train cut through the night, its whistle occasionally breaking the silence. Other passengers began retiring to their sleeping compartments. Eliza and Rowan returned to theirs, maintaining the careful distance they'd established. You should try to sleep, Rowan said. It's been a long day. I don't think I can. Try anyway. There's a blanket in the overhead compartment. He pulled it down for her, then settled into his own seat, closing his eyes. Within minutes, his breathing evened out. Eliza sat in the darkness, wrapped in the blanket, watching the black landscape rush past. She must have dozed eventually because she woke with a start to Rowan shaking her shoulder gently. We're arriving in Truro. 15 minutes. She straightened, disoriented. Her neck ached from sleeping in an awkward position. The elaborate updo her hairdresser had created was half collapsed, pins digging into her scalp. The train pulled into a small station, barely lit by a handful of gas lamps. A handful of passengers disembarked, but the platform was mostly empty. Rowan helped her down, and she stood there shivering in the night air. The wedding dress, designed for a spring ceremony in a heated cathedral, offered no protection against the coastal wind. The carriage should be waiting, Rowan said. My housekeeper knew I might be returning today. They found it near the station's entrance. A sturdy, practical vehicle driven by an older man who showed no surprise at Rowan's unexpected companion in bridal attire. Evening, Mr. Blackmore. Miss? He tipped his hat. Mrs. Talbot has rooms prepared. Thank you, James. The drive through darkened countryside was quiet, except for the sound of hooves and wheels on dirt roads. Eliza caught glimpses of the ocean in the distance, moonlight reflecting off dark water. The air smelled different here, salt and soil and something wild. They climbed steadily, the road winding along cliff tops. And then, silhouetted against the night sky, Blackmore Hall rose into view. It wasn't what Eliza expected. No sprawling manor house with dozens of windows and formal grounds. Instead, a stone structure that seemed to grow from the cliff itself, built to withstand storms rather than impress visitors. 3 stories, solid and somewhat severe, with lights burning in a few windows. The carriage stopped before a heavy wooden door. Before Rowan could knock, it swung open to reveal a woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back severely, wearing a practical dress and apron. Mr. Blackmore. Her eyes moved to Eliza, taking in the wedding dress without visible reaction. And guest, please, come in out of the cold. The entryway was warm, lit by oil lamps that cast flickering shadows on stone walls. The house felt solid, permanent, utterly unlike the decorative elegance of London townhouses. "Mrs. Talbot, this is Miss Thornfield. She'll be staying with us for a while. She's had a difficult day and needs rest." "Of course." Mrs. Talbot's expression softened slightly. "I've prepared the blue room. This way, miss." Eliza followed her up a curved stone staircase, Rowan trailing behind. The blue room turned out to be surprisingly comfortable. A large bed with thick blankets, a fireplace already lit, windows overlooking what she assumed was the ocean, though she could only see darkness now. "There's a dressing gown on the bed," Mrs. Talbot said. "And I'll bring up some tea. You look half frozen, poor thing." After she left, Eliza stood in the center of the room, suddenly overwhelmed. Rowan hovered in the doorway. "Will this be adequate?" "It's perfect. Thank you for all of this. Get some rest. We can talk tomorrow about everything else." He started to leave, but Eliza stopped him. "Rowan, what happens when they come looking for me?" "Who?" "My family. The Duke. They won't just let this go. They don't know where you are. And even if they suspect, Cornwall is a long way from London. You don't know my father, or the Duke. They'll send people, investigators. Then we'll deal with it when it happens." He met her eyes. "You're safe here, Eliza. I promise you that." After he left, she struggled out of the wedding dress, fingers fumbling with the dozens of tiny buttons and hooks. The corset finally came loose, and she gasped at the relief of breathing fully. She left the dress in a heap on the floor, a pile of expensive fabric that represented everything she'd walked away from. The dressing gown was soft, worn comfortable. She wrapped herself in it and moved to the window, pulling back the curtains. Dawn was breaking. She hadn't realized how late, or early, it was. And there, stretching out to the horizon, was the ocean. Gray-green water churning with white-capped waves, crashing against rocks below. Wild. Untamed. Honest, as Rowan had said. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and felt something unlock in her chest. A knock at the door. "Mrs. Talbot, with tea and toast. Thought you might need something. You've had quite a night, I'd wager." "Thank you." Eliza took the tray, noting how the housekeeper's eyes went to the discarded wedding dress. "Shall I take that away for you, miss? Please, burn it if you like." Mrs. Talbot's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "I'll see it's properly disposed of. You sleep now. Everything looks different after rest." But Eliza couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, drinking tea and watching the sun rise over the ocean, painting the water in shades of pink and gold. She'd never seen anything like it. In London, sunrise was a vague lightening of gray skies, filtered through smoke and fog. Here, it was transformation. She must have fallen asleep eventually, because she woke to afternoon light and voices below her window. Male voices, unfamiliar, speaking in urgent tones. Eliza moved to the window and looked down. 3 men stood in the courtyard talking to Rowan. They were dressed for travel, dusty and tired looking. One of them held a piece of paper. Her stomach dropped. They'd found her, less than 24 hours, and they'd already tracked her here. She dressed quickly in a simple day dress Mrs. Talbot had left hanging in the wardrobe, too large, but serviceable. Then she crept downstairs, following the sound of voices to a study near the back of the house. The door was ajar. She could hear Rowan's voice, calm but firm. "Understand you're doing your job, but I'm telling you there's no one here by that description. Mr. Blackmore, we have reliable information that you left London yesterday with a young woman matching Miss Thornfield's description. In a wedding dress, if reports are accurate. Reports are often inaccurate. So you deny being at Paddington Station yesterday afternoon?" A pause. "I was at Paddington. I travel frequently. I don't recall every passenger I might have encountered. Sir, the Duke of Ashford is offering a substantial reward for information leading to Miss Thornfield's safe return. If you're harboring her, I'm harboring no one. This is my private residence. Unless you have legal authority to search it, I'll have to ask you to leave. We could return with that authority. Then do so. Until then, good day, gentlemen." Eliza heard footsteps approaching the door. She barely had time to step back before Rowan emerged, closing the door firmly behind him. He saw her immediately, his expression hardening. "You should be resting." "They're looking for me, already." "I know, but they have no legal grounds to search the house without your family pressing charges, which they won't do. Too scandalous." The Duke is offering a reward. The Duke can offer whatever he likes. It doesn't give strangers the right to invade private property. He guided her away from the study, toward the back of the house. You need to stay out of sight for a few days, just until this initial furor dies down. And if it doesn't die down, if they keep looking, then we adapt. They'd reached a small sitting room with windows overlooking the cliffs. Rowan turned to face her. Eliza, I need you to be honest with me. Do you regret this? Because if you want to go back, I'll arrange it. No judgment. She thought about it, really considered returning to London, apologizing, begging the Duke to still marry her. The humiliation would be crushing, but she could survive it. Her family would be saved. Life would return to normal. Normal. The word tasted like ash. No, she said firmly. I don't want to go back. Then we stay the course. But things are going to get harder before they get easier. You understand that? I do. Good. He moved to the window, looking out at the ocean. There's something else. Mrs. Talbot heard from her sister in the village. Your family has sent word to all the coaching inns and train stations in Cornwall. They're looking for you actively. My father and the Duke. Apparently he's quite determined to find his missing bride. Eliza felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He's not coming here for love, or even pride. It's about control. I know. Rowan, what if... She stopped, afraid to voice the thought. What? What if he doesn't stop? What if he comes here, demands I return, makes accusations against you? Then we'll deal with it, together. He turned to face her. But Eliza, you need to make a choice. You can't stay here indefinitely as a fugitive. Eventually, you'll need a more permanent solution. What kind of solution? He held her gaze. There's one option that would make you legally untouchable. That would give you protection, autonomy, and the right to refuse anyone's demands. Understanding dawned slowly. Marriage. To someone of your choosing, who would respect your independence and ask nothing you weren't willing to give. His voice was carefully neutral. It's a practical arrangement, nothing romantic, but it would solve the problem. You're suggesting we marry. I'm suggesting it as an option, one possibility among several. You could also wait out the scandal, eventually find employment, build an independent life. He paused. But marriage would be faster, more certain. And what would you get from this arrangement? Peace. I've spent years avoiding London society's expectations that I remarry, produce heirs, re-enter social circles. A marriage of convenience would end those pressures permanently. It was insane. Practical, but insane. Marriage to a man she barely knew, just to escape marriage to a man she knew too well. I need time to think, she said. Of course, there's no rush. But even as he said it, they both heard the sound of horses in the courtyard. More visitors. Rowan moved to the window. Damn. Who is it? A carriage, expensive by the look of it. His jaw tightened. The Ashford crest on the door. Eliza's blood went cold. He's here. Edmund is here. Stay out of sight. I'll handle this. No. She straightened her spine. If he's come all this way, avoiding him will only make things worse. Better to face it now. Eliza, cease. I can do this. She walked to the front of the house, Rowan close behind. Through the windows, she could see the Duke's carriage, and emerging from it, the man himself. Edmund, Duke of Ashford, dressed immaculately despite the long journey, his face set in an expression she recognized, controlled fury masked as concern. Mrs. Talbot was already at the door, blocking his entrance. Sir, I'll need to announce you properly. I'm here for my fiancée. I know she's inside. Edmund's voice carried through the house. Miss Thornfield, Eliza, please come out. Let's discuss this rationally. Eliza took a breath and stepped forward, appearing in the doorway. Edmund's eyes locked onto her immediately. There you are, thank heavens. We've been so worried. I'm fine, Edmund. You're clearly not fine, running away from our wedding, disappearing with a stranger. His eyes cut to Rowan. Mr. Blackmore, I presume. You've caused quite a bit of trouble. I've caused nothing, Rowan said coldly. Miss Thornfield made her own choices. Under duress, clearly suffering some kind of breakdown. Edmund focused back on Eliza, his voice softening into something meant to sound caring. Darling, I understand you're frightened. Cold feet are natural, but running away? This isn't like you. You don't know what's like me. You don't know me at all. I know you're a sensible woman who understands duty and propriety. This behavior, it's beneath you. He took a step forward. Come home. We'll forget this happened. The wedding can be rescheduled quietly, and no! The word hung in the air. Edmund's mask slipped just for a moment, showing the anger underneath. Eliza, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm refusing to marry a man who views me as a transaction. Who's in love with my cousin? Who planned to humiliate me for the rest of my life while maintaining a public facade of respectability? Edmund's face went pale, then red. Who told you? He stopped himself. That's ridiculous. Vivian and I are barely acquainted. I heard you at Lord Pemberton's ball, in the East Corridor. Eliza kept her voice steady. You were quite clear about the arrangement. I was to be suitable and ornamental. You and Vivian would continue your relationship. I was simply the respectable front for a dukedom that needed an heir. You misunderstood. I understood perfectly, which is why I left. Edmund's expression darkened. You've embarrassed yourself, your family, me. Do you have any idea what the newspapers are saying, the scandal you've created? I'm aware. Then you know you have no choice but to return. Your reputation is already destroyed. Marriage to me is the only way to salvage anything from this disaster. I'd rather have no reputation at all than buy it back by marrying you. Edmund lunged forward suddenly, grabbing her arm. You're coming back to London, now, before you make this any worse. Rowan moved faster than Eliza would have thought possible. One moment Edmund had her arm in a painful grip, the next he was stumbling backward, Rowan between them. Touch her again, and you'll regret it. How dare you? I'm a duke. I don't care if you're the king. You don't put your hands on her without permission. Rowan's voice was ice. She's said no, multiple times. That's the end of the discussion. This is kidnapping. I'll have you arrested. On what grounds? She came here willingly. She's staying willingly. You have no claim on her. I have every claim. She's my betrothed. Was your betrothed. Past tense. The wedding didn't happen. Rowan stepped closer. Now get back in your carriage and return to London. I'll ruin you, both of you. You have no idea the power I wield. Actually, I do, and I found that power means very little this far from London, where people care more about character than titles. Rowan gestured to the door. Leave. Now. For a moment, Eliza thought Edmund might actually strike him. The Duke's hands clenched into fists, his face contorted with rage. But then he seemed to remember himself, or perhaps recognize that he was outnumbered. Mrs. Talbot had appeared with two large footmen, both looking ready to intervene. This isn't over, Edmund said quietly, his eyes on Eliza. You belong to me. You accepted my proposal, broke that engagement. There will be consequences. Then I'll face them. But I won't face them as your wife. Edmund stared at her for a long moment, and something in his expression made her skin crawl. Not anger anymore. Something colder. More calculating. We'll see, he said finally. Then he turned and walked back to his carriage. They watched him leave, the carriage disappearing down the cliff road. Only when it was completely out of sight did Eliza allow herself to shake. That was unpleasant, Rowan said quietly. That was terrifying. She wrapped her arms around herself. He's not going to let this go. Probably not. He'll come back, or send people, or find some legal way to force my return. Then we need to make sure he has no legal standing. Rowan turned to face her fully. Eliza, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before answering. What? Marry me. Not someday. Tomorrow. Before the Duke can mount any kind of legal challenge. He held up a hand. I know it sounds mad. I know we barely know each other, but it would protect you. Legally, socially, permanently, and I swear to you I would never— Yes. He stopped mid-sentence. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Tomorrow, or today, or whenever we can arrange it. Eliza felt strangely calm. You're right, it's mad. It's possibly the most impulsive decision I've ever made, but staying unmarried leaves me vulnerable. To my family's demands, to the Duke's machinations, to society's judgment. Marriage to you gives me protection, agency, a life I can actually control. You understand what you're agreeing to? A practical arrangement, no romantic expectations. Independence and respect on both sides. She met his eyes. That's more than most marriages offer, more than the one I just escaped. Rowan studied her face. All right then. I'll speak to the vicar in the village. We can be married by special license within 48 hours. Good. Eliza, his voice softened. You don't have to decide this quickly. If you need more time, I've had enough time, enough thinking and weighing options and trying to make everyone else happy. She felt something settling in her chest, solid and certain. This choice is mine, truly mine, and I'm making it. He nodded slowly. Then I'll make the arrangements. The village church was smaller than the powder room in her mother's London townhouse. Stone walls blackened by centuries of coastal weather, wooden pews that creaked when you breathed too hard, and a vicar who looked at Eliza with open suspicion when Rowan explained they needed to marry immediately. Special license, you say? Reverend Ashby was perhaps 60, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Those are typically reserved for urgent circumstances. The circumstances are urgent, Rowan said evenly. I see. The vicar's gaze moved to Eliza, taking in her borrowed dress, her lack of chaperone, the absence of family. Miss Thornfield, is it? You're certain this is your wish? You appear quite young. I'm 23, and yes, I'm certain. No family present to witness? My family is in London. And they approve of this union? Eliza felt heat rise in her face. My family's approval is not required, Reverend. I'm of age. Nevertheless, it's highly irregular. A young woman appearing in my village with no connections, no background. I can vouch for Miss Thornfield's character, Rowan interrupted. As can Mrs. Talbot, who's known her these past 2 days. 2 days? The vicar's eyebrows climbed. You've known each other 2 days and wish to marry? We've known each other longer than that. We met in London, several times. Rowan's voice remained calm, but Eliza could see tension in his shoulders. Reverend, with respect, we've obtained the proper license. The law is satisfied. Will you perform the ceremony or not? The silence stretched. Through the church's narrow windows, Eliza could see gray sky threatening rain. She thought about Edmund's face when he'd left Blackmore Hall, that cold calculation in his eyes. He'd been gone less than a day. If the vicar refused them now, they'd lose precious time. Please, she said quietly. I know this appears strange, but Mr. Blackmore is offering me protection I desperately need, from a situation I can't fully explain but that you must trust is genuine. Reverend Ashby studied her face. Whatever he saw there seemed to soften him slightly. Protection from what, child? From a marriage I didn't choose. From men who view women as property. From a life that would have slowly killed everything in me worth preserving. The vicar was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. Very well. I'll perform the ceremony, but I'm doing so on faith that you both understand the seriousness of the vows you're about to make. Marriage is not a legal convenience, Mr. Blackmore. It's a sacred bond. I understand, Reverend. Tomorrow morning, then. 8 o'clock. I'll need 2 witnesses. Mrs. Talbot and James, my driver, can serve. Fine. Now leave me. I have preparations to make. Outside, the threatened rain had started, light but persistent. Rowan helped Eliza into the carriage, and they rode back to Blackmore Hall in silence. The reality of what she'd agreed to was beginning to settle like sediment in water, slowly revealing the shape of things beneath the surface. She was getting married. Again. To a man she barely knew, in a church smaller than her bedroom, with no family present and no celebration. Just a practical transaction to solve a practical problem. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing she'd done in years. Second thoughts? Rowan asked as they climbed the hill toward the house. Constantly. But I'm not changing my mind. Good. Because I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. Eliza turned to look at him. What? While we were in the village, Mrs. Talbot received word from her sister. The Duke's men have been asking questions, showing your portrait around, offering money for information about your whereabouts. I thought we had time. So did I. But Edmund is apparently more determined than I anticipated. Rowan's jaw tightened. He's also been spreading a story. That you're unwell. That you've had some kind of mental collapse and are being held against your will by someone taking advantage of your weakened state. That's insane. It's strategic. If he can convince the authorities you're not in your right mind, he could potentially force your return. Have you declared incompetent, placed under family guardianship? Eliza felt ice slide down her spine. Can he actually do that? With enough money and influence? Possibly. The law gives men considerable power over women they consider their responsibility. I'm not his responsibility. Try telling that to a magistrate when a duke arrives with doctors willing to testify to your instability. Rowan leaned forward. Eliza, once we're married tomorrow, you'll be legally under my protection. He won't be able to touch you, but until then, I'm vulnerable. Yes. The carriage pulled up to Blackmore Hall. They hurried inside, rain now coming down harder. Mrs. Talbot met them in the entryway, her face creased with worry. Mr. Blackmore, there's been another visitor, a woman. Said she was Miss Eliza's cousin. I told her you were out, but she's waiting in the sitting room. Refused to leave. Eliza's stomach dropped. Vivian. You don't have to see her, Rowan said immediately. No, I should. Better to know what she wants. Eliza handed her wet cloak to Mrs. Talbot. Where is she? The blue sitting room, miss. I've had tea brought in, though she's touched none of it. Eliza walked through the house, very aware of Rowan following close behind. The blue sitting room overlooked the cliffs, and Vivian stood at the window, her back to the door. She wore traveling clothes, expensive but practical, and her blonde hair was slightly disheveled from the journey. Vivian. Her cousin turned, and Eliza was struck by how tired she looked. Not the polished beauty who'd helped her dress for the wedding that never happened. Someone older, worn. Eliza, thank heavens. I've been so worried. Have you? Vivian flinched at the coldness in her voice. Of course I have. We all have. Your mother is beside herself. Your father is probably more concerned about his business prospects than my well-being. That's not fair, isn't it? Eliza moved into the room, maintaining distance between them. Why are you here, Vivian? To bring you home, to talk sense into you before you destroy everything. Vivian's eyes moved to Rowan, standing in the doorway. Mr. Blackmore, I'd like to speak with my cousin privately. No, Eliza said before Rowan could respond. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of him. Vivian's face hardened. Fine. Eliza, you need to come back to London. The Duke is willing to forgive this episode. The wedding can be rescheduled quietly. If you return now, the scandal can be managed. I'm not going back. You don't have a choice. Do you understand what you've done? The shame you've brought on the family? Catherine's engagement has been called off. Your father's creditors are circling. Mother refuses to leave the house. Vivian's voice rose. All because you decided to have some kind of breakdown on your wedding day. I didn't have a breakdown. I made a choice. To run away with a stranger, to hide in Cornwall like a criminal, to refuse a marriage to a man who's in love with you. The words hung in the air. Vivian went very still. I don't know what you think you heard. I heard everything. At Lord Pemberton's ball, you and Edmund discussing how the marriage was just a formality, how he'd have me for appearances while keeping you for, what did he call it? Affection. Vivian's face crumpled. For a moment, Eliza thought she might deny it. Instead, she sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. You weren't supposed to know. Well, I do. It's not what you think. Vivian looked up, her eyes wet. Edmund and I, it's complicated. We met 2 years ago, fell in love, but he's a duke and I'm nobody. No title, no fortune, nothing to offer except myself. His position requires a certain type of wife, and I'm not suitable. So I was supposed to be suitable instead. You were perfect for what he needed, well-bred, proper, trainable. Trainable? Eliza's voice went quiet, dangerous. Like a dog? I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it, Vivian? Because it sounds like you and Edmund planned to use me as decoration while conducting your affair under my roof. It wouldn't have been like that. You would have been well cared for, respected. You would have had everything that, except honesty, except dignity, except any kind of genuine partnership. Eliza moved closer. Did it ever occur to you that I might not want to be well cared for by a man who views me as a transaction? Eliza, you're being naive. Love matches are fantasies. Marriage is always a transaction, always. The only question is what you're trading for what. Then I'm trading my family's approval for my freedom, and I'm getting the better deal. Vivian stood abruptly. You're making a terrible mistake. The Duke won't let this go. He's furious, humiliated, and men like him don't forgive humiliation. Let him be furious. You don't understand what he's capable of. Vivian stopped herself, but not before Eliza saw real fear flash across her face. What do you mean? Nothing. Just be careful. Edmund doesn't lose gracefully. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Vivian moved toward the door, pausing beside Rowan. "Mr. Blackmore, I hope you understand what you're involving yourself in. The Duke of Ashford is not a man to cross lightly. I'll take my chances." After Vivian left, Eliza sank onto the window seat, suddenly exhausted. Rowan closed the door and moved to pour her a drink from the decanter on the side table. "Here, you look like you need it." She took the glass, brandy, sharp and warming. "Did you hear that? The way she talked about it? Like it was reasonable." People convince themselves of all sorts of things to justify their choices. "She was my favorite cousin. We shared everything growing up, and she was willing to watch me marry her lover just so she could keep him. Love makes people selfish, or maybe it just reveals the selfishness that was always there." Eliza drank, letting the brandy burn down her throat. Outside, the rain had intensified, turning the ocean gray and violent. "She's right about one thing. Edmund won't let this go. We'll be married tomorrow. After that we'll be married. But that doesn't make us safe. You heard Vivian. He doesn't lose gracefully." She turned to face Rowan. "What if he contests the marriage? Claims it was done under duress, that I wasn't in my right mind?" "On what grounds?" "On whatever grounds money can buy. Doctors willing to testify, magistrates willing to rule in his favor." A crash from downstairs cut her off. Both of them froze. Mrs. Talbot's voice raised in protest. Male voices, multiple, shouting. The sound of boots on stone floors. Rowan moved to the door, but before he could open it, it burst inward. 3 men pushed past him into the room, rough-looking types in working clothes, the kind hired for muscle rather than thinking. "Miss Eliza Thornfield?" The largest one stepped forward. "We're here to escort you back to London. The Duke of Ashford has requested your immediate return." "Get out of this house," Rowan said coldly. "Can't do that, sir. We have our orders." The man pulled a document from his coat. "Got a writ here, signed by a magistrate in Truro, says Miss Thornfield is to be returned to her family for her own protection." "That's not legal." "It's legal enough. Now, miss, you can come peacefully or we can make it difficult. Your choice." Eliza stood, her heart pounding. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "See, that's the thing. Document says you're not in your right mind to make that choice. Says you've been behaving erratically, fled your own wedding, and are currently under the influence of someone who may not have your best interests at heart." He looked at Rowan. "No offense, sir." "Every offense taken." Rowan moved to stand between them and Eliza. "You're not taking her." "We're not asking permission." The largest man moved forward. Rowan met him, and for a moment Eliza thought there would be a fight. But then Mrs. Talbot appeared in the doorway with James and 2 other men from the estate, all carrying various implements that could serve as weapons. "I believe Mr. Blackmore asked you to leave," Mrs. Talbot said, her voice steel. The hired men exchanged glances. They were outnumbered, at least for now. "This isn't over," the leader said. "We'll be back, with more men if needed. That writ is legal, and the Duke's got the law on his side." "Then come back with the law. Proper authorities, not hired thugs." Rowan's voice didn't waver. "Until then, you're trespassing." They retreated, but slowly, making it clear they weren't intimidated, just outnumbered. Eliza watched them go, her hands shaking. "He's escalating," she said quietly. "Edmund is escalating." "We knew he would. Not this fast. A writ? Already? How did he even—" She stopped. "The magistrate in Truro. He must have gone straight there from here. With enough money and the right story. He bought a ruling, yes." Rowan turned to Mrs. Talbot. "Lock all the doors, post someone to watch the road. If they come back, I want warning." "Yes, sir." After the housekeeper left, Rowan paced the room, thinking. "We need to move the wedding up, tonight if possible. The vicar won't. Then we find someone who will. There must be another church, another minister. Even if we could, would it matter? If Edmund has a magistrate willing to rule me incompetent, a marriage might not protect me. He could have it annulled, claim I wasn't capable of consent. Not if we consummate it." The words fell into silence. Eliza stared at him. "What?" Rowan's face was carefully neutral. "A consummated marriage is much harder to annul. Nearly impossible, actually. If we marry tonight and complete the union, Edmund would have no legal ground to contest it." "You're suggesting we should—" "I'm suggesting a practical solution to a legal problem. Nothing more." He met her eyes. "I know this wasn't part of our agreement. I know I promised this would be a marriage in name only. But if Edmund is moving this aggressively, we need to close every possible avenue of attack. Eliza's mind raced. The thought of being intimate with Rowan, a man she'd known less than 3 days, should have been appalling. And yet, compared to the alternative of being dragged back to London, declared incompetent, and forced into Edmund's control, this would just be practical? Once? Once, to establish the legal validity of the marriage. After that, we'd go back to the arrangement we discussed, separate lives under the same roof. And you'd be comfortable with that? Comfortable isn't the word I'd use, but I'd rather an uncomfortable solution that protects you than a comfortable one that leaves you vulnerable. He paused. Eliza, I won't force this. If you'd rather take our chances with the law as it stands. No. She cut him off, decision crystallizing. You're right. We need to close every loophole. If marriage and consummation makes me legally untouchable, then that's what we do. You're certain? I'm terrified, but I'm certain. She managed a shaky laugh. I seem to be making a habit of terrifying decisions lately. I'll speak to the vicar. Try to convince him to perform the ceremony tonight. Rowan moved toward the door, then stopped. Eliza, I want you to know, I'll make this as painless as possible. You have my word. After he left, Eliza stood at the window watching the storm batter the coastline. In London, she'd spent years being told exactly how her wedding night would proceed. Whispered instructions from married friends, careful hints from her mother about wifely duty. All of it assuming a husband she'd known for months, in a house filled with servants, following traditions centuries old. This would be nothing like that. Mrs. Talbot appeared with dinner on a tray. Thought you might want something in your room, miss, given the circumstances. Thank you. Eliza took the tray mechanically. Mrs. Talbot, can I ask you something? Of course, miss. Do you think I'm making a mistake, marrying Mr. Blackmore? The older woman considered carefully. I think you're making the best choice available to you, which isn't the same as a good choice exactly, but it's better than the alternatives. That's not particularly reassuring. Wasn't meant to be reassuring, miss. Was meant to be honest. Mrs. Talbot moved to the fire, stoking it higher. Mr. Blackmore is a good man. Fair employer, kind to those who work for him, doesn't put on airs. He's also been alone a long time. Since his sister died, he's kept everyone at arm's length. He told me about her, about what happened. Then you understand why he's careful with trust. But if he's offering you protection, he means it. He's not the type to make promises he won't keep. After Mrs. Talbot left, Eliza tried to eat but couldn't manage more than a few bites. She was standing at the window again when she heard the commotion outside. Raised voices, the sound of horses. Her stomach clenched. They were back. Edmund's men, returning with reinforcements. But when she looked down into the courtyard, the scene was different than expected. Not hired thugs. A proper carriage bearing a crest she didn't recognize. And emerging from it, 2 men in formal attire and a woman she knew too well. Her mother. Eliza's breath caught. Lady Thornfield stood in the rain looking up at Blackmore Hall like it was a prison she'd come to breach. Beside her was a man who could only be a solicitor, and another who had the bearing of someone official. A magistrate, perhaps. They'd brought the law. She ran downstairs to find Rowan already in the entryway blocking the door. No right to force entry, he was saying. We have every right. The official-looking man held up papers. I'm Magistrate Pemberton from Truro. I have a writ authorizing the return of Miss Eliza Thornfield to her family's custody on grounds that she's suffering a mental affliction and is being held here against her better judgment. I'm being held nowhere, Eliza said, appearing beside Rowan. I came here willingly, and I'm staying willingly. Her mother's face crumpled at the sight of her. Eliza, darling, thank heavens. We've been so worried. Please, come home. All of this can be fixed. There's nothing to fix, Mother. You left your own wedding. Disappeared for days. Of course there's something wrong. The only thing wrong was the marriage itself. I won't apologize for refusing it. Lady Thornfield looked at the magistrate helplessly. He stepped forward, his expression professionally sympathetic. Miss Thornfield, I understand you're upset, but running away, behaving erratically, these are signs of distress that concern your family. They're acting in your best interest. My best interest would have been letting me make my own choices from the start. You're young. Emotional, not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, clearer than I have in years. Nevertheless, the law recognizes that women in distress require male guidance. Your father, as your nearest male relation, has the authority to determine what's best. My father has no authority over me. I'm of age. An unmarried woman of 23 is still under her father's legal protection. Then I'll remedy that. Eliza turned to Rowan. Is the vicar coming? He's on his way. Should be here within the hour. Good. She looked back at her mother. You can witness my wedding if you like. Otherwise, you can leave. Lady Thornfield's face went white. You're marrying him? This stranger? Eliza, you can't. I can. I am. And once I do, none of you have any legal claim on me whatsoever. The magistrate exchanged glances with the solicitor. A marriage performed under duress is still a marriage, and there's no duress, unless you count the pressure you're all applying to force me back to London. Miss Thornfield, be reasonable. I'm done being reasonable. I'm done being obedient. I'm done being what everyone else needs me to be. Eliza's voice rose. I will marry Mr. Blackmore tonight. The marriage will be consummated, and there won't be a damn thing any of you can do about it. Her mother gasped. The magistrate looked genuinely shocked at her language. Eliza didn't care. Now leave, all of you, before I have you removed for trespassing. Eliza. Her mother tried again. Mother, please, I know you think you're helping, but you're not. The best thing you can do for me is go back to London and tell Father I'm making my own choice. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing. Lady Thornfield's face was a mask of pain and confusion. For a moment, Eliza almost weakened, almost went to her, apologized, tried to explain, but then she remembered all the years of careful shaping, of being trimmed and pruned into something acceptable. All the times her mother had said, ladies don't. You mustn't. What will people think? I'm sorry, Eliza said quietly, but I'm not coming home. Her mother turned and walked back to the carriage, the magistrate and solicitor following. As they pulled away, Eliza felt something break inside her, not painfully, but like a weight cracking and falling away. That was brutal, Rowan said quietly. It was necessary. Your mother looked devastated. My mother tried to sell me to a duke to solve my father's financial problems. I'm having trouble feeling sympathetic. He was quiet for a moment. The vicar should be here soon. Are you... I'm ready. Reverend Ashby arrived 20 minutes later, looking deeply unhappy. Mr. Blackmore, I agreed to perform the ceremony tomorrow, not tonight, and certainly not under these circumstances. The circumstances have changed. We need to marry immediately. I gathered that from your mother's carriage passing mine on the road, Miss Thornfield. She looked quite distressed. She'll recover. The vicar studied both of them. This feels wrong, rushed, coerced. It's not coerced, Eliza said firmly. I want this marriage. I need this marriage. Please, Reverend, help us. Something in her voice must have reached him. He sighed heavily. Very well, but we'll do this properly. I'll need witnesses, both of you will speak your vows clearly, and I'll not rush through the ceremony just because you're in a hurry. Thank you, Rowan said. They gathered in Blackmore Hall's small chapel, a room Eliza hadn't known existed until Mrs. Talbot led them there. Stone walls, wooden pews for perhaps a dozen people, and a simple altar. Mrs. Talbot and James served as witnesses. The ceremony was brief but not hurried. Reverend Ashby spoke the traditional words with careful solemnity. When it came time for vows, Eliza's voice didn't shake. I, Eliza Margaret Thornfield, take thee, Rowan James Blackmore. She meant every word, even knowing this wasn't the marriage she'd once dreamed of. It was better than a dream. It was real, chosen, hers. When Rowan slipped the ring on her finger, a simple gold band he'd somehow procured, she felt something settle into place. I now pronounce you man and wife. It was done. They signed the register, Mrs. Talbot and James adding their signatures as witnesses, legal, binding, complete. Congratulations, the vicar said, though he didn't sound happy about it. May your union bring you both peace. After he left, Eliza stood in the chapel with her new husband, acutely aware that the hardest part was still ahead. We don't have to, Rowan started. Yes, we do. You said it yourself. We need to close every loophole. She squared her shoulders. Where? My room. It's more private. They walked through the house in silence. His room was at the far end of the second floor, overlooking the ocean. Large, sparsely furnished, dominated by a massive bed that suddenly seemed to take up all available space. Rowan moved to light the fire while Eliza stood awkwardly in the center of the room. This was absurd. She was married to a man she barely knew, about to— Listen, Rowan said, turning to face her. We can make this as simple as possible. Medical, almost. Just enough to establish consummation legally. How romantic. Romance wasn't part of our agreement. No, it wasn't. Eliza moved to the window, looking out at the dark ocean. I keep thinking about what my life would have been. If I'd married Edmund, years of pretending not to notice him and Vivian, of being decorative and quiet, of slowly disappearing into the role I was supposed to play. You didn't choose that. I chose this instead. This strange, practical arrangement with a man who's been kinder to me in 3 days than Edmund was in 7 meetings. She turned to look at him. Thank you for that, for all of this. Don't thank me yet. We still have to convince everyone this marriage is real. Then we'd better make it convincing. She started unbuttoning her dress, fingers clumsy on the fastenings. Rowan watched for a moment, then moved to help, his hand steady where hers shook. We'll get through this, he said quietly. I know. The dress fell away, then the layers beneath, until she stood in just her chemise, feeling more exposed than she ever had in her life. Rowan had turned away, giving her privacy, but now he faced her again. His expression was carefully controlled, but she saw something flicker in his eyes, recognition that this was harder than either of them had anticipated. Come here, he said gently. She moved to the bed, sitting on its edge. He knelt before her, eye level now, and took her hands. Listen to me. We do this on your terms. If you need to stop, we stop. If you need time, we take time. This is to protect you, not hurt you. I understand. Do you? His grip tightened slightly. Because I need you to know, I'm not him. I'm not Edmund or any of the other men who would have used you. This is just closing a legal door, nothing more than that. She believed him. Strange to trust a man she barely knew more than the one society had chosen for her. I'm ready. What followed was awkward and brief and nothing like the romantic wedding night she'd once imagined. But it was honest. Rowan was gentle, patient, and when it was done, they lay in the darkness listening to the storm outside. That's it then, Eliza said quietly. We're really married. Legally untouchable. Edmund is going to be furious. Let him be furious from London. But even as Rowan said it, they heard the sound, distant at first, then growing closer. Horses. Multiple horses. Moving fast. Rowan was at the window instantly. No. What? Riders, at least a dozen. Coming up the road. Eliza joined him, wrapping a blanket around herself. In the darkness, she could make out the shapes. Mounted men, carrying torches, moving with purpose toward Blackmore Hall. Edmund, she whispered. Not just Edmund. Those are soldiers. He's brought the military. They dressed hurriedly and ran downstairs. Mrs. Talbot met them in the hallway, her face pale. Mr. Blackmore, there are men surrounding the house, armed men. They're demanding entry. A pounding at the front door, a voice shouting, Open in the name of the Crown! We have a warrant for the arrest of Rowan Blackmore on charges of kidnapping. Rowan and Eliza exchanged looks. The marriage, Eliza started, may not matter if he's convinced them I abducted you. Rowan moved toward the door. Stay back. If they try to take you— The door burst inward, lock shattering. Soldiers poured through, and behind them, stepping into the house like he owned it, came Edmund, Duke of Ashford. His eyes found Eliza immediately, then moved to Rowan. Then back to Eliza, taking in her disheveled appearance, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders, the obvious implication. His face went carefully blank. Too late, am I? We're married, Eliza said, forcing strength into her voice. Legally married. The marriage has been consummated. You have no claim on me. Married? Edmund pulled papers from his coat. I have a sworn statement from a magistrate declaring you mentally unfit. I have testimony from your mother that you were coerced, and I have a warrant for Mr. Blackmore's arrest on charges of abduction and assault. Those charges are false, are they? You fled your wedding, disappeared with a stranger, and now claim to have married him within days. Edmund's voice was ice. That sounds like a woman who's been manipulated, possibly drugged, certainly not capable of legal consent. I consented to everything. Your consent is invalid if you're not in your right mind, which multiple witnesses are prepared to testify you're not. He nodded to the soldiers. Take Mr. Blackmore into custody. No! Eliza lunged forward, but soldiers caught her arms. Rowan didn't fight as they restrained him. His eyes stayed on Eliza. Don't let him... Quiet. Edmund moved closer to Eliza, his smile terrible. Did you really think you could humiliate me and walk away? That I'd just accept being jilted at the altar, made a laughingstock of London society? This isn't about your pride. Everything is about pride, power, control. His hand came up, gripping her chin, forcing her to look at him. You're mine, Eliza. You were always going to be mine. This little rebellion just means I'll have to break you properly before we wed. I'll never marry you. You will. Once Mr. Blackmore is tried and hanged for kidnapping, once this sham marriage is annulled, once you've spent a few months in an asylum learning to be grateful for my mercy, you'll beg to marry me. The words hit like blows. Hanged, asylum, tried. You can't... I already have. Edmund released her, stepping back. Take her to the carriage. Take him to the garrison. And burn this house. I want no trace of this insult standing. Burn it? Eliza struggled against the soldiers. There are people here, staff. They have 5 minutes to evacuate. Then the torches fall. It was madness. Complete madness. But as soldiers dragged her toward the door and others began herding Mrs. Talbot and the staff outside, Eliza understood with terrible clarity Edmund wasn't trying to rescue her. He was destroying everyone and everything that had helped her escape. And there was nothing she could do to stop him. The soldiers had Eliza halfway to the carriage when she heard Mrs. Talbot's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. You'll want to see this, Your Grace. Edmund paused, irritation flickering across his face. I don't have time for the marriage register, signed by Reverend Ashby himself, not 2 hours ago. Mrs. Talbot stood in the doorway holding a leather-bound book, her expression carved from granite. Legal and binding, with proper witnesses. I've already explained that the marriage is invalid. You've explained your opinion, but the law says otherwise. Mrs. Talbot opened the register displaying the signatures. Miss Thornfield, Mrs. Blackmore now, was of sound mind when she spoke her vows. I was there. So was James. So was the Reverend, who will testify to her clarity of purpose. The testimony of servants is hardly... The testimony of a respected vicar, however, carries considerable weight. The voice came from the road below. Everyone turned. Reverend Ashby stood there, still in his formal robes, flanked by what appeared to be half the village. Men and women Eliza had never met, villagers who'd somehow heard the commotion and come to see what a duke's soldiers were doing surrounding Blackmore Hall. Your Grace, the vicar continued, moving forward with a confidence that belied his earlier hesitation. I performed the marriage ceremony myself. Mrs. Blackmore was entirely lucid. She understood the vows she was making and spoke them freely. Any claim otherwise is false. Edmund's jaw tightened. Reverend, with all respect, you don't understand the full situation. I understand that you're attempting to arrest a man on his wedding night and abduct his lawful wife. I understand that you've brought soldiers to burn down a house with staff still inside. What I don't understand is how any of that aligns with the law you claim to represent. A murmur ran through the gathered villagers. Eliza saw recognition dawning on several faces. The scandal from London had reached even here, and now they were seeing it play out in front of them. The marriage was performed under duress, Edmund said, his voice hardening. Mrs. Thornfield was clearly not in her right mind. I was perfectly rational, Eliza interrupted, finding her voice. I spoke my vows freely. I consummated my marriage willingly, and I will testify to that in any court you choose. The soldiers holding her arms loosened their grip slightly, uncertainty crossing their faces. One of them, a young man barely 20, looked actively uncomfortable. Edmund's expression went cold. Your testimony is irrelevant if you're declared incompetent. By whom? A magistrate you bribed in Truro? Eliza pulled free from the soldiers, stepping toward Edmund. How much did it cost to buy that writ? How many people did you pay to lie about my mental state? How dare you suggest... I'm not suggesting. I'm stating fact. She turned to address the gathered crowd, her voice carrying. The Duke of Ashford was engaged to marry me. I discovered he'd been conducting an affair with my cousin and planned to continue it after our wedding. When I refused to participate in that arrangement, he declared me mad and is now attempting to force my return through threats and fabricated legal documents. More murmuring. The villagers exchanged glances. This was better than theater. That's a complete mischaracterization, Edmund started. Is it? Then explain why you're here with soldiers. Explain the warrant for my husband's arrest. Explain why you're threatening to burn this house. Eliza's hands were shaking, but her voice held steady. If I truly had been kidnapped, if I truly was incompetent, wouldn't you be focused on my welfare rather than destroying evidence of my legal marriage? I am focused on your welfare. You're focused on your pride. I embarrassed you, made you look foolish in front of London society, and you can't tolerate that. Edmund moved toward her, and the young soldier who'd been holding her arm actually stepped between them. Sir, perhaps we should— Stand down, Edmund snapped. But the soldier didn't move, and something shifted in the air. Your Grace. This voice was new, older, authoritative. A man in official dress was making his way through the crowd. I'm Magistrate Hendricks from Plymouth. I received word of a disturbance and came to investigate. Edmund's face went carefully neutral. Magistrate Hendricks, I wasn't aware Plymouth had jurisdiction here. Cornwall's a small county, Your Grace. We keep an eye on each other's districts. Hendricks looked around, taking in the soldiers, the threatened house, the frightened staff huddled together. What exactly is happening here? I'm retrieving my fiancé, who was abducted. His former fiancé, Eliza interrupted, who married another man tonight, legally and willingly. Under duress? Can you prove duress, Your Grace? Hendricks pulled out a notebook. Because making such claims requires evidence, witnesses, medical testimony. I have witnesses. Her own mother testified that her daughter ran from a wedding, not that she was abducted or incompetent. Hendricks glanced at the vicar. Reverend Ashby, you performed this marriage. I did. This evening, the bride was clear-minded and willing. And you, Mrs. Blackmore? You married Mr. Blackmore of your own free will? I did. Under what circumstances? Eliza took a breath. This was it. The moment to tell the truth or maintain some dignity. She chose truth. I fled my wedding to the Duke 3 days ago after discovering he planned to continue an affair with my cousin after our marriage. Mr. Blackmore offered me refuge. When the Duke began pursuing me with increasing aggression, including hiring men to forcibly return me to London, Mr. Blackmore offered marriage as legal protection. I accepted. We married tonight. The marriage has been consummated. That's the complete truth. Silence. Then Hendricks wrote several notes. And you, Mr. Blackmore? Do you confirm this account? Rowan, still held by 2 soldiers, nodded. Every word. Your Grace, Hendricks said, turning to Edmund. Based on what I'm hearing, there's no crime here. A woman of legal age chose to end one engagement and enter another marriage. Unusual, certainly. Scandalous, perhaps, but not illegal. She's not in her right mind. She seems perfectly lucid to me. Reverend Ashby confirms it. Her own testimony is coherent. Hendricks closed his notebook. Unless you have actual medical evidence of incompetence, recent examination by a qualified physician, not just opinions from family members, I see no grounds for these arrests or this property destruction. Edmund's face had gone dangerously still. Magistrate Hendricks, I wonder if you understand who you're speaking to. A duke. Yes, I'm aware. Hendricks didn't flinch. I'm also aware that titles don't supersede law. If you wish to contest this marriage, there are legal channels, civil courts, proper procedures. Showing up with soldiers and threatening arson isn't among them. I have a warrant. From Magistrate Pemberton in Truro, yes. I know Pemberton. Good man, but he has a weakness for impressive titles and generous donations. Hendricks gestured to the soldiers. This warrant isn't valid in my jurisdiction. Release Mr. Blackmore. The soldiers looked between Hendricks and Edmund, uncertain who to obey. The commanding officer, an older man with a weathered face, finally spoke. Your Grace, if the magistrate says— I heard what the magistrate said. Edmund's voice was ice. But I'm not finished here. Yes, you are. This came from an unexpected source. One of the village women, older, with the bearing of someone used to being heard. We don't hold with this kind of carrying on. Threatening to burn houses, dragging people from their beds, frightening everyone. Duke or no Duke, you've got no right. Ma'am, this doesn't concern— It concerns all of us when soldiers are threatening our neighbors. The woman stepped forward, and others moved with her. A wall of villagers, none of them wealthy or titled, but all of them clearly done with Edmund's performance. Mrs. Blackmore seems like a sensible woman who made her own choice. You don't like it? Take it up in court. But you're leaving. Now. Edmund stared at her, clearly unused to being spoken to this way by anyone, let alone a village woman. For a moment, Eliza thought he might actually do something violent. Then he seemed to remember where he was, who was watching. Fine. He turned to the commanding officer. Release him. We're returning to London. Your Grace, I said release him. This magistrate wants proper procedures? He'll get them. I'll have this marriage annulled through the courts. I'll have Blackmore charged with fraud and manipulation, and I'll have Mrs. Thornfield returned to her family where she belongs. Former Miss Thornfield is legally Mrs. Blackmore now, Hendricks said quietly, and she belongs wherever she chooses to be. The soldiers released Rowan. He immediately moved to Eliza's side, his hand finding hers. Edmund watched this with an expression that made her skin crawl. Enjoy your little victory, he said softly, just loud enough for them to hear. It won't last. I have resources you can't imagine, connections that reach every corner of England. I will make your lives so unbearable that you'll beg for this marriage to end. Threaten me all you like, Rowan said, but if you come near my wife again, title or no title, I'll make you regret it. Your wife, Edmund laughed, bitter and sharp. You really think this changes anything? She's still the woman who humiliated me in front of all London, still the woman who needs to learn her place. And I promise you, both of you, I will teach her, one way or another. He turned and walked to his carriage, soldiers following. The villagers parted to let them through, watching in silence as the whole procession moved down the cliff road and disappeared into darkness. Only when they were completely gone did Eliza feel her knees start to give way. Rowan caught her, and suddenly Mrs. Talbot was there too, supporting her other side. Inside, the housekeeper said, Quickly, before you collapse out here in front of everyone. They helped her into the house, into the small sitting room where this nightmare had begun with Vivian's visit. How long ago was that? Hours? It felt like years. Magistrate Hendricks followed them in, along with Reverend Ashby. The villagers remained outside, talking among themselves, probably composing the stories they'd tell for years about the night a duke came to their village and was turned away. Mrs. Blackmore. Hendricks settled into a chair across from her. I need you to understand something. What happened tonight, that was a temporary victory. The Duke will pursue this through legal channels now, and he has resources that make him formidable. I know. Do you? Because annulment cases can drag on for years. He'll challenge every aspect of your marriage, claim fraud, duress, insanity. He'll hire the best solicitors, bribe witnesses, manufacture evidence. Hendricks leaned forward. And he'll make your life hell while he does it. Social ostracism, financial pressure, constant legal harassment. Are you prepared for that? No, Eliza said honestly, but I'm more prepared for it than I am for marriage to him. Hendricks studied her. You're either very brave or very foolish. I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? A slight smile. Fair point. He stood. I'll do what I can to ensure proper legal procedures are followed. The Duke can't be allowed to simply buy his way around the law, but my authority only extends so far. I understand. Thank you for tonight. If you hadn't arrived, Reverend Ashby sent word. He thought things might go badly and wanted neutral authority present. Hendricks nodded to the vicar. Good instincts. After they left, Eliza sat in silence with Rowan and Mrs. Talbot. The house was quiet now, staff having returned to their quarters, excitement fading into exhausted relief. He's going to destroy us, Eliza said finally. Edmund, he meant every word. He'll use every resource, every connection, until we're broken. Then we don't break. Rowan's voice was firm. We knew this would be hard. I don't think either of us knew it would be this hard this fast. No, he admitted. But we're still standing, we're still married, and he didn't get what he came for. Mrs. Talbot cleared her throat. If I may, sir, madam, the Duke made a mistake tonight. What mistake? Eliza asked. Eliza. He showed his hand, revealed himself as a bully and a tyrant in front of witnesses. Those villagers will talk. The story will spread. And it won't be the story he wants told. Mrs. Talbot stood, smoothing her apron. Public opinion may not matter much in London drawing rooms, but it matters in places like this. And once a story takes root in Cornwall, it has a way of traveling. After she left, Eliza turned to Rowan. Do you think she's right? That tonight hurt Edmund more than it hurt us? I think we survived, which is more than I was certain of an hour ago. He took her hand. Eliza, I want you to know, if you want to end this marriage, seek annulment yourself, I'll support that decision. I never meant to trap you in a different cage. You haven't trapped me. You've given me weapons. She squeezed his hand. For the first time in my life, I have legal standing. I have a husband who sees me as an equal rather than property. I have agency. That's not a cage. That's freedom. Freedom that Edmund will do everything possible to destroy. Let him try. Eliza felt something hardening in her chest, something that had been soft and accommodating her entire life. I'm done being afraid of powerful men. Over the next 3 days, the world seemed to hold its breath. No soldiers appeared. No writs were delivered. The only visitor was a solicitor from London who arrived to formally serve papers contesting the marriage's validity on grounds of fraud and duress. Rowan engaged his own solicitor, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Pembroke, who listened to their story with increasing interest. This is highly unusual, she said, reviewing the documents in Rowan's study. But not impossible to defend. The key will be maintaining a united front and demonstrating that the marriage is genuine. What does that mean? Eliza asked. It means you'll need to live as husband and wife. Publicly, convincingly. Mrs. Pembroke looked between them. The Duke's argument rests on claiming this was a marriage of convenience performed under duress. If you want to defeat that claim, you need to prove it's a real marriage based on genuine affection. But it is a marriage of convenience, Rowan said. We've been honest about that. Then I suggest you become less honest, at least publicly. Mrs. Pembroke set down her papers. Court proceedings can take months. During that time, every aspect of your relationship will be scrutinized. How you speak to each other, how you present yourselves, whether you appear to be a legitimate married couple or two strangers playing roles. You're saying we need to pretend to be in love, Eliza said. I'm saying you need to be convincing. Whether that involves actual affection or excellent acting is up to you. Mrs. Pembroke stood. I'll file our response to these papers. In the meantime, I suggest you prepare for a long battle. The Duke has filed in London courts, which means you'll need to travel there for proceedings. London? Eliza felt her stomach drop. I can't go back to London. You'll have to, eventually. Running from the proceedings will only strengthen his case. Mrs. Pembroke's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Blackmore, I know this is frightening, but you've chosen to fight. That means showing up to the fight, even when the arena is hostile. After she left, Eliza stood at the window looking out at the ocean. The water was calmer today, gray-green under overcast skies. She'd been at Blackmore Hall less than a week. It already felt more like home than her family's London townhouse ever had. We could run, Rowan said quietly. Leave England entirely. France, perhaps, or America. And abandon everything you've built here, your estate, your life. It's just property. You're more important. The words hung between them. Eliza turned to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You barely know me, she said. I know enough. I know you're braver than you think. I know you chose freedom over security. I know... He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. I know I'd rather fight this battle than watch you disappear across an ocean. Even if we lose, we won't lose. Edmund's overconfident. He's used to buying his way through obstacles, but this isn't London high society. This is law, and law has teeth even for dukes. Eliza wanted to believe him, but she'd seen Edmund's face when he'd threatened them, heard the certainty in his voice. He wasn't bluffing about his resources or his connections. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Talbot entered, looking troubled. There's someone here to see you, Mrs. Blackmore. Says she's your sister. Catherine. Eliza's first instinct was to refuse the visit, but curiosity won out. Show her in. Her sister appeared moments later, looking exhausted and travel-worn. Catherine had always been the practical one, the daughter who never caused problems. Seeing her here, in Cornwall, was wrong somehow. Eliza, Catherine's voice cracked. Thank heavens you're all right. I'm fine, Catherine. You're married to a stranger and being sued by a duke. That's not fine. Catherine moved into the room, glancing uncertainly at Rowan. Mr. Blackmore, I apologize for arriving unannounced. Not at all. Should I give you privacy? No, Eliza said. Whatever Catherine needs to say, you should hear. Her sister looked between them, then seemed to make a decision. I came to warn you. Mother and father are planning something. They've been meeting with Edmund's solicitors, discussing ways to have the marriage annulled and you returned home. We expected that. You don't understand. They're claiming you were kidnapped, that Mr. Blackmore drugged you, held you against your will, forced you into marriage while you were incapacitated. Catherine's hands twisted together. They're going to testify to it, in court, under oath. Eliza felt the floor shift. They're going to lie? Commit perjury? They believe they're saving you. Mother's convinced you've had some kind of breakdown. Father thinks Edmund is the only way to salvage the family's financial situation. Catherine's voice dropped. And Edmund has offered them a considerable sum, enough to solve all of Father's business problems, in exchange for their testimony. He's bribing them. He's making it worth their while to see things his way. Catherine finally met Eliza's eyes. I'm sorry. I know I should have stood up for you before, should have questioned the marriage to Edmund, but I didn't. I just went along with what Mother and Father wanted, like I always do. Then why are you here now? Because I heard them planning it. Heard them discussing exactly what they'd say in court to make you sound insane and Mr. Blackmore sound predatory. And I realized... She stopped, tears starting to fall. I realized that if I didn't do something, I'd be complicit in destroying my own sister's life. Rowan stepped forward. Miss Thornfield, are you willing to testify to what you just told us? That your parents are planning perjured testimony? I don't know. They're still my parents. If I testify against them, they're already testifying against their daughter, Eliza said quietly. For money, Catherine flinched. I know it's wrong, but they're desperate, Eliza. Father's debts are worse than anyone knew. Without Edmund's money, we'll lose everything. So they're willing to sacrifice me to save themselves. They think they're helping. Mother genuinely believes you've been manipulated. Because that's easier than accepting that I chose this, that I'd rather have nothing than live the life they planned for me. Eliza moved to her sister. Catherine, I need you to be honest. Do you think I'm insane? Do you think I've been manipulated? Her sister looked at her for a long moment, then shook her head. No, I think you're the sanest person in our family, and I think you did what I've been too afraid to do, chose yourself over everyone else's expectations. Then help us. Testify truthfully about what our parents are planning. If I do, they'll disown me. My engagement is already broken because of the scandal. If I testify against them, I'll have nothing. You'll have the truth, which is worth more than their approval. Catherine was quiet, clearly struggling. Finally, she nodded. All right, I'll testify. But Eliza, you need to know what you're up against. Edmund isn't just filing for annulment. He's building a narrative that you're unstable, possibly hysterical, definitely not capable of making sound decisions. He has doctors willing to testify they've treated you for nervous conditions. I've never seen a doctor for nervous conditions. Doesn't matter. They'll claim you have. They'll present medical records, however fraudulent. And with Mother and Father backing up the story, Catherine shook her head. It's going to be ugly. After Catherine left to find lodging in the village, Eliza sat with Rowan in heavy silence. We can't win, she said finally. Can we? Not against this. Not against fabricated medical records and perjured testimony from my own parents. We can win. Rowan's voice was steady. But not by playing Edmund's game. We need to change the rules. How? By making this about more than just our marriage. By making it about how the law treats women, how society enables powerful men to destroy anyone who challenges them. He stood, pacing. Edmund wants this to be a quiet court proceeding where he controls the narrative. We make it public, loud, impossible to ignore. You want to create a scandal? I want to create a cause. We get your story, the real story, into the newspapers. Not society gossip columns, but actual news reporting. We make people see what Edmund's really doing, and we force the courts to rule in the public eye where bias is harder to hide. Eliza thought about it. Everything in her upbringing screamed against such public exposure. Ladies didn't create scandals. They certainly didn't air private matters in the press. But she wasn't a lady anymore. She was a woman fighting for her freedom. How do we do it? I know a journalist in London. She specializes in stories about women's rights, legal inequities. She'd be interested in this. A woman journalist? There are a few. Not many, but they're fierce. Rowan pulled out paper and pen. I'll write to her. See if she's willing to investigate. But Eliza, once we do this, there's no going back. Your private life becomes public property. Everything will be examined and discussed. It already is being examined and discussed. At least this way the truth gets told. 2 days later, a telegram arrived from London. The journalist, a woman named Sarah Mitchell, was interested. Very interested. She'd be arriving in Cornwall within the week to interview them both. But before she could arrive, something else happened that changed everything. Vivian showed up at Blackmore Hall. She arrived alone, in a hired carriage, looking nothing like the polished society woman Eliza remembered. Her dress was rumpled, her face blotchy from crying. Mrs. Talbot announced her with visible reluctance. "She's in a state, madam. Says it's urgent." Eliza found her cousin in the entry hall, pacing. When Vivian saw her, she let out a sob. "Eliza, thank you for seeing me. I wasn't sure you would—" "I'm not sure I should. What do you want, Vivian?" "To tell you the truth, all of it." Vivian wiped at her face. "Edmund is planning something terrible. Worse than the annulment. Worse than the lies in court." "What could be worse?" "He's going to have you committed. To an asylum. He has the papers drawn up, doctors bribed, a private facility arranged. Once the annulment is granted, or even if it's not, he plans to have you declared insane and institutionalized." The words hit like ice water. "He can't do that." "He can. He will. Once you're locked away, no one will listen to you. You'll just be a madwoman raving about conspiracies, and he'll control your entire life." Vivian's voice broke. "I thought I loved him. I thought he loved me. But when I heard him planning this, bragging about it, I realized he doesn't love anyone. He just collects people like property and destroys anyone who tries to escape." Rowan had appeared in the doorway. "Why should we believe you? You've lied before." "I know. I'm a terrible person. I helped him plan to humiliate Eliza. I was jealous and selfish and awful." Vivian turned to Eliza. "But I can't let him do this. I can't watch him destroy you just to soothe his wounded pride. So I brought proof." She pulled papers from her bag. Legal documents, asylum commitment forms, all with Eliza's name. All signed by doctors claiming to have examined her and found her dangerously unstable. "He showed me these, wanted me to understand how thoroughly he'd won, how completely he'd control you." Vivian's hands shook as she handed over the papers. "I stole them, copied them. These are evidence of his plans." Eliza looked at the documents, feeling sick. They were detailed, professional, completely fabricated, and utterly convincing to anyone who didn't know better. "This is attempted fraud," Rowan said, scanning the papers. "Criminal conspiracy. If we can prove he arranged this—" "I'll testify," Vivian interrupted. "In court. Publicly. I'll admit to everything. The affair, the plan to humiliate Eliza, all of it. And I'll testify about these documents, about his plans for institutionalization." "Why?" Eliza asked. "Why would you do that? It destroys you too. Because you were right about all of it." Vivian met her eyes. "I chose a man who views women as possessions. I helped him plan to trap you in a loveless marriage. And I convinced myself it was fine because I'd get what I wanted. But watching him plan to institutionalize you, watching him laugh about how he'd break you, I realized I'm next. Once he's done destroying you, he'll do the same to me, or to the next woman who displeases him." She took a shaking breath. "So I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing to tell the truth, even though it costs me everything. Because maybe if enough of us choose truth over comfort, men like Edmund lose their power." Eliza stared at her cousin. This woman who'd betrayed her, who'd helped orchestrate her humiliation, now standing here offering the one thing that might save them. "I don't forgive you," Eliza said quietly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want to help." Rowan was already moving. "We need to get these documents to Mrs. Pembroke immediately, and to the journalist when she arrives. This changes everything." He was right. These papers were proof of Edmund's true intentions. Proof that this wasn't about a concerned ex-fiancé trying to help a troubled woman. This was about a powerful man orchestrating the complete destruction of someone who dared to refuse him. "There's something else," Vivian said. "Your parents. They're meeting with Edmund tomorrow in London, finalizing their testimony. If you want to stop them, you need to act now." "How do you know this?" "Edmund told me. He wanted me there. Wanted me to watch as your family sold you out." She smiled bitterly. "He's very good at rubbing salt in wounds. It's one of his talents." Eliza looked at Rowan. "We need to go to London." "It's too dangerous. Edmund will..." Will what? He's already planning to have me institutionalized. He's already bribing my family. Hiding in Cornwall won't stop any of that. She straightened her shoulders. If we're going to fight, we fight where the battle is. And right now, that's London. Mrs. Pembroke said, Mrs. Pembroke was right. We need to face this. But we face it on our terms, with our own weapons. She gestured to the papers Vivian had brought. We have proof of his conspiracy. We have a witness willing to testify, and we have the truth. That's more than Edmund expects us to have. Rowan studied her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod. All right, we go to London, but we go prepared. We bring Mrs. Pembroke, we coordinate with Sarah Mitchell, and we make sure every newspaper in the city knows exactly what Edmund's been planning. Agreed. They left for London the next morning, traveling by train with Vivian, Mrs. Pembroke, and a copy of every document they possessed. The city loomed as they approached, gray and vast and full of people who'd heard the scandal and formed their opinions. Eliza watched it grow closer through the train window and felt not fear, but something sharper. Something that tasted like anger and determination mixed together. She'd run from this city once, fled her wedding and everything it represented. Now she was coming back, not to apologize or beg forgiveness, but to fight. And this time she wouldn't be fighting alone. Sarah Mitchell met them at the train station, a woman of perhaps 40, with ink-stained fingers and eyes that missed nothing. She shook hands with a grip that meant business. Mrs. Blackmore? Mr. Blackmore? Miss Thornfield. She nodded to Vivian. I've been investigating the Duke of Ashford for 3 years. If half of what you've told me is true, this story will bring him down. It's all true, Eliza said. Every word. Then we have work to do. The annulment hearing is scheduled for tomorrow at 10, but I've arranged something else for this afternoon that should prove interesting. Sarah's smile was sharp. How do you feel about giving a public statement? To whom? Everyone who will listen. I've called a gathering at the Women's Reform Society Hall. Members of the press will be there. Women's rights advocates. Some members of Parliament who've been sympathetic to reform causes. Sarah started walking, expecting them to follow. The Duke has controlled this narrative from the beginning. Time to take that control back. The Reform Society Hall was packed. Women filled every seat, lined the walls, crowded near the doors. Eliza recognized some faces from London society. Women who'd cut her dead on the street just weeks ago. Others were working women, suffragettes, reformers who'd never been welcome in drawing rooms. Sarah led them to a small platform at the front. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I'm Sarah Mitchell from the London Reformer. I'm here to introduce Mrs. Eliza Blackmore, who has a story that concerns every woman in this room. Eliza stepped forward, her hands shaking. Public speaking had never been part of a lady's education. She was supposed to be decorative and quiet, especially in front of crowds. But she was done being quiet. My name is Eliza Blackmore. 3 weeks ago, I was Eliza Thornfield, engaged to marry the Duke of Ashford. I ran from that wedding after discovering my fiancé was conducting an affair with my cousin and planned to continue it throughout our marriage. I refused to participate in that arrangement. For that refusal, I've been declared insane. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Eliza continued, her voice gaining strength. The Duke has filed to have my marriage annulled on grounds that I'm mentally incompetent. He's bribed doctors to create false medical records. He's convinced my parents to commit perjury, and he's drawn up commitment papers to have me institutionalized in a private asylum where I'll have no legal rights and no voice. The murmurs grew louder. Someone in the back shouted, "Proof! I have proof!" Eliza gestured to Mrs. Pembroke, who began distributing copies of the asylum documents. These are commitment papers with my name, signed by doctors I've never met, claiming diagnoses from examinations that never happened, all arranged by the Duke of Ashford to punish me for the crime of refusing to marry him. Women passed the papers around, reading with increasing outrage. A reporter near the front was scribbling furiously in his notebook. This isn't just my story, Eliza continued. It's the story of every woman who's been told she's hysterical for having opinions. Every woman who's been declared incompetent for making choices men don't approve of. Every woman who's been threatened with institutionalization for defying male authority. How do we know you're telling the truth? This from a society matron near the middle. The Duke says you fled your wedding in a state of mental collapse. The Duke is lying. Vivian stood, moving to stand beside Eliza. I know, because I helped him plan it. I was his mistress. The affair Mrs. Blackmore discovered was with me. Gasps. shocked exclamations. The reporter's pen flew across the page. Edmund, the Duke, never loved Eliza. He chose her because she was suitable, well-bred, proper, unlikely to cause problems. He planned to marry her for appearances while keeping me as his actual companion. When Eliza discovered this and refused to participate, he became enraged, not heartbroken, not concerned for her welfare, enraged that a woman dared to reject him. Vivian's voice shook but held steady. I'm here to testify to all of this. The affair, the conspiracy, the false medical documents. I helped him plan to destroy her, and I'm ashamed of that, but I won't help him anymore. Why should we believe you now? Someone called out. If you've lied before, because I have nothing to gain by telling the truth, and everything to lose. My reputation is destroyed. My family will disown me. But I'd rather lose everything than watch an innocent woman be institutionalized for refusing to be property. The hall erupted into discussion. Sarah let it run for a moment, then raised her hands for quiet. Mrs. Blackmore, what do you want from this hearing tomorrow? I want my marriage recognized as legal and valid. I want the false medical records exposed as fraud, and I want the Duke of Ashford held accountable for conspiracy and attempted imprisonment. Those are serious allegations against a peer of the realm. Then it's time we held peers of the realm to the same standards as everyone else. Eliza looked out at the crowd. How many women here have been told they're being irrational when they're being rational? How many have been threatened with doctors or asylums for behavior that would be perfectly acceptable in men? How many have lost their voices because powerful men decided they talked too much? Hands began to rise, one by one, then in clusters, until nearly every woman in the room had a hand raised. This is bigger than one duke and one marriage, Eliza said quietly. This is about whether women have the right to say no, whether we're people or property, whether the law protects us or just protects men's control over us. After the gathering, they returned to the hotel where Mrs. Pembroke had secured rooms. Eliza was exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear. Tomorrow would be the hearing. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. Catherine arrived near midnight, slipping into their room like a thief. They know, she said without preamble. Mother and father. They heard about the Reform Society gathering. Father's furious. Mother's locked herself in her room. Will they still testify for Edmund? I don't know. The money is very tempting. But having their lies exposed in public? Catherine sat heavily on the bed. Father's pride might actually outweigh his desperation. He hates being made to look foolish more than he hates being poor. What about you? Eliza asked. Your testimony tomorrow. Are you still willing? I am. I've written everything down. How mother and father discussed what they'd say. How Edmund offered them money. All of it. Catherine looked at her sister. I'm terrified. But I'm also tired of being afraid. You were right, Eliza. About everything. I've been so busy being perfect that I forgot to be honest. The hearing the next morning was held in a surprisingly small courtroom. Judge Harrison presided, an older man with a reputation for fairness, but also for strictly observing legal precedent. Edmund sat with his solicitors on one side, looking confident and controlled. Eliza and Rowan sat across from them with Mrs. Pembroke. The gallery was packed. Sarah Mitchell had made sure every newspaper in London knew about this hearing. Women from the Reform Society filled the seats, and somewhere in the back, Eliza's parents sat in rigid silence. Judge Harrison called the court to order. We're here to address the petition of Edmund Ashford, Duke of Ashford, to annul the marriage of Eliza Thornfield to Rowan Blackmore on grounds of mental incompetence and duress. Mr. Pemberton, you represent the Duke? Edmund's lead solicitor stood, a sleek man named Pemberton, who oozed expensive education. Yes, Your Honor, we'll demonstrate that Miss Thornfield, Mrs. Blackmore, Mrs. Pembroke interrupted. Her legal name is Mrs. Blackmore. Pemberton smiled thinly. Mrs. Blackmore allegedly was suffering a mental breakdown when she fled her wedding and subsequently married Mr. Blackmore, under circumstances that suggest coercion and manipulation. Allegedly? Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow. Either she was or she wasn't. Which is it? We have medical evidence. Let's see this evidence then. Pemberton presented the documents, medical records claiming Eliza had been treated for nervous hysteria, anxiety, and delusional thinking. Dr. Morrison, a physician in Edmund's employ, took the stand to testify he'd examined her multiple times. Dr. Morrison, Mrs. Pembroke began her cross-examination with deceptive gentleness. You claim to have examined Mrs. Blackmore on 4 separate occasions in the 6 months prior to her wedding. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. And during these examinations, you observed symptoms of mental instability? Severe instability. She was anxious, emotional, occasionally irrational, yet... Interesting. Because Mrs. Blackmore's actual physician, Dr. Matthews, has provided records showing she was in perfect health during that period. No examinations for nervous conditions, no treatments prescribed. Mrs. Pembroke held up papers. In fact, Dr. Matthews states he never referred her to you or any other specialist. Dr. Morrison's face paled slightly. The records may be under a different name. Under what name? She wasn't married yet. Thornfield was her only legal name. Mrs. Pembroke stepped closer. Dr. Morrison, isn't it true that you never examined Mrs. Blackmore at all? That these records were created at the Duke of Ashford's request to provide justification for annulment? I object to this line of questioning. Pemberton started. I'll allow it, Judge Harrison said. Answer the question, Doctor. Dr. Morrison looked at Edmund, who sat stone-faced. I may have been mistaken about the specific patient, so you committed perjury. No, I mean, the Duke assured me... The Duke assured you of what? That it was acceptable to fabricate medical records? To testify about examinations that never occurred? The doctor didn't answer. Judge Harrison's expression had gone cold. Step down, Dr. Morrison. I'll be referring this matter to the medical board for review. He looked at Pemberton. Is your entire case built on fraudulent testimony? No, Your Honor. We also have testimony from Mrs. Blackmore's parents regarding her state of mind. Call them then. Lord and Lady Thornfield took the stand together, looking diminished somehow, smaller than Eliza remembered. Her mother wouldn't meet her eyes. Pemberton walked them through prepared testimony about Eliza's supposed instability, her erratic behavior, her sudden and inexplicable flight from the wedding. It was smooth, rehearsed, completely false. Then Mrs. Pembroke stood for cross-examination. Lord Thornfield, you claim your daughter was behaving erratically in the weeks before her wedding. Can you give specific examples? Her father shifted uncomfortably. She was withdrawn, quiet, withdrawn and quiet. Those are the behaviors that concerned you? She wasn't herself. Or perhaps she was exactly herself, and you simply didn't like what you saw. Mrs. Pembroke's voice sharpened. Lord Thornfield, isn't it true that you arranged your daughter's marriage to the Duke primarily to solve your own financial difficulties? The marriage was mutually beneficial. That's not what I asked. Yes or no? Did you arrange this marriage to access the Duke's wealth and connections? A long pause. Then quietly, yes. And when your daughter refused to participate in this arrangement, did the Duke offer you money in exchange for testimony claiming she was mentally incompetent? That's not... Yes or no, Lord Thornfield, did the Duke offer you payment for this testimony? Eliza watched her father's face crumble. In that moment, she almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Yes, he whispered. Gasps from the gallery. The reporters scribbled frantically. Judge Harrison leaned forward. You accepted money to commit perjury in court? I believed I was helping my daughter. By lying under oath? By attempting to have her declared incompetent so she could be forced into an unwanted marriage or institutionalized? The judge's voice was ice. Step down, both of you. You're fortunate I don't have you arrested immediately. Edmund's face had gone carefully blank, but Eliza saw the calculation behind his eyes. He was already planning his next move, already figuring out how to spin this. Your Honor, Pemberton tried again, even setting aside the medical testimony and parental concerns, the marriage itself was highly irregular, performed hastily, without proper courtship. Mrs. Pembroke. The judge gestured for her to respond. The marriage was performed by a licensed vicar with proper witnesses. Mrs. Blackmore was of legal age and sound mind. The ceremony followed all legal requirements. Mrs. Pembroke paused. However, we have evidence that suggests the Duke's motivation for this annulment has nothing to do with concern for Mrs. Blackmore's welfare. She presented the asylum commitment papers. Judge Harrison read them, his expression darkening with each page. These are commitment papers for Mrs. Blackmore. Pre-signed. Predated. He looked at Edmund. Your Grace, can you explain why you would have commitment papers drawn up for a woman you claim to be concerned about? Edmund stood smoothly. Those papers were prepared as a precaution, Your Honor. If Mrs. Thornfield truly was suffering a breakdown, institutionalization might have been necessary for her own safety. Safety? Vivian's voice rang out from the gallery. May I speak, Your Honor? This is highly irregular. So is attempting to have a sane woman committed to an asylum. I have testimony relevant to these proceedings. Judge Harrison hesitated, then nodded. Come forward. Vivian walked to the witness stand with her head high. She took the oath and sat. State your name for the record. Vivian Thornfield, I'm Mrs. Blackmore's cousin. And you have testimony regarding these commitment papers? I do. The Duke showed them to me himself, explained how he'd arranged for Mrs. Blackmore to be institutionalized indefinitely, regardless of whether the annulment was granted. Vivian's voice steadied. He planned to have her declared incompetent, committed to a private facility, and kept there until she agreed to submit to his authority. That's a lie. Edmund was on his feet. Your Honor, this woman is clearly— Sit down, Your Grace. Judge Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. Continue, Miss Thornfield. I can corroborate everything because I was the Duke's mistress. The affair Mrs. Blackmore discovered was with me. The Duke planned to marry her for appearances while continuing our relationship. When she refused, he became obsessed with punishing her. Vivian pulled out papers, letters in Edmund's handwriting discussing the affair, detailing plans for after his marriage to Eliza, confirming arrangements with the asylum. She'd kept everything. I have 3 years of correspondence, proof of the affair, proof of his intentions, proof of his true character. She looked directly at Edmund. You made me keep them. Said they were romantic, mementos of our love. Turns out they're just evidence of your cruelty. Edmund's composure finally cracked. You vindictive— Your Grace, one more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. Judge Harrison was reading through the letters, his expression growing more severe. This is damning evidence. Conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted illegal imprisonment, perjury. He looked at Edmund. You've used your position and wealth to orchestrate a comprehensive attack on a woman whose only crime was refusing to marry you. She humiliated me. So you decided to destroy her life, to have her institutionalized, stripped of all rights and freedoms, because she exercised her legal right to refuse marriage. Harrison's voice rose. This is exactly the kind of abuse of power that brings the entire peerage system into disrepute. He shuffled papers, then looked at Eliza. Mrs. Blackmore, would you like to address the court? Eliza stood, surprised. Yes, Your Honor. Tell me in your own words why you left your wedding. She took a breath. I left because I overheard the Duke telling my cousin that I was suitable, like furniture, that our marriage was a business arrangement, that he would continue his relationship with her while I served as decorative cover for his reputation. She felt tears threatening but pushed through. I left because I realized that if I married him, I would spend the rest of my life disappearing, becoming smaller and quieter and less real, until there was nothing left of me except what he found convenient. And Mr. Blackmore, did he coerce you into marriage? No, he offered me protection, a legal partnership based on honesty and respect, which was more than the Duke ever offered. Do you love him? The question caught her off guard. She looked at Rowan, sitting there watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I don't know, she said honestly. We've only known each other a few weeks, but I trust him, I respect him, and I believe we can build something real together if we're given the chance. That's more than most marriages start with. Judge Harrison nodded slowly. Mr. Blackmore, do you have anything to add? Rowan stood. Just that I would rather spend my life with a woman who challenges me than one who simply obeys. Mrs. Blackmore is brave, intelligent, and honest. If she chooses to stay married to me, I'll consider myself fortunate. If she chooses otherwise, I'll respect that decision, because that's what partners do. They respect each other's choices. Silence filled the courtroom. Then Harrison began writing. When he looked up, his expression was granite. I'm denying the petition for annulment. The marriage between Eliza Blackmore and Rowan Blackmore is legal and valid. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the Crown Prosecutor for criminal charges against Edmund Ashford for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted illegal imprisonment, and suborning perjury. Edmund shot to his feet. You can't! I'm a duke! You're a criminal who happens to have a title. The law applies to you the same as everyone else. Harrison's gavel came down. Court is adjourned. The gallery erupted. Women cheering, reporters rushing for the doors. Edmund stood frozen, clearly unable to process that he'd actually lost. Eliza felt Rowan's hand find hers, warm and solid. She gripped it hard. They'd won. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Word had spread fast. Women from the Reform Society, suffragettes, working women who'd read about the case in newspapers. They cheered when Eliza and Rowan emerged. Sarah Mitchell was already there with her notebook. "Mrs. Blackmore, how do you feel about the ruling?" Relieved, vindicated, terrified of what comes next. Eliza managed a shaky smile. Mostly relieved. "What do you say to other women facing similar situations? That you don't have to accept what you're told your life should be, that saying no is powerful, that the law can protect you if you're willing to fight for that protection." She paused. "And that you're not alone, even when it feels like you are." More questions, more reporters. Eventually, Mrs. Pembroke shepherded them into a waiting carriage. "You need to leave London," she said. "Edmund will appeal. He'll use every connection he has to overturn this ruling, and he'll be dangerous now, humiliated and cornered." "We know," Rowan said. "We're going back to Cornwall tonight." "Good. I'll handle the criminal proceedings from here, but you two need to stay safe." They returned to Blackmore Hall 3 days later, exhausted and emotionally wrung out. The house looked different somehow, more like home. Mrs. Talbot met them at the door with tea and sympathy. "All of London's talking about it," they say. "The Duke who tried to imprison his bride." "All of England, probably," Eliza said. "We made quite the scandal." "A good scandal, though, the kind that might change things." Mrs. Talbot smiled. "There's a pile of letters for you, supporters, mostly. Women thanking you for speaking up." Eliza spent the evening reading them. Letters from all over England, from women she'd never met, sharing their own stories of forced marriages, threatened institutionalizations, legal battles against powerful men. Each one ended the same way. "Thank you for fighting. Thank you for winning." She was crying by the time she finished, overwhelmed by the weight of all these voices. Rowan found her on the cliff walk behind the house, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold and purple. "You all right?" "I don't know. I keep thinking about all those women, all those stories. How many of them didn't win?" She wiped at her eyes. "We won. But it could have gone the other way so easily." "But it didn't. And your victory, our victory, might make it easier for the next woman. And the next." He settled beside her on the stone bench. "You changed something, Eliza. Not just for yourself. We changed it. You were there too. I helped. But this was your fight. Your courage." He was quiet for a moment. "I meant what I said in court. If you want to end this marriage, find someone you actually love. Stop." She turned to face him. "I meant what I said too. I don't know if this is love, but it's partnership. It's respect. It's honesty. And maybe that's better than love. Or maybe it's the foundation love grows from. Maybe." She leaned against him, surprising them both. He put an arm around her shoulders, and they sat watching the ocean until the stars came out. 2 months later, the Crown prosecutor brought formal charges against Edmund. The trial was sensational. Newspapers covered every detail. Society was scandalized. And for once, a powerful man actually faced consequences. Edmund was found guilty of conspiracy and fraud. His title was stripped. His fortune was seized to pay damages. And he spent 3 years in prison, emerging a broken man that no one in society would acknowledge. Eliza's parents tried to reconcile. She met with them once in a London tea room and listened to their apologies. "We thought we were helping," her mother said. "We genuinely believed you'd had some kind of collapse." "You believed what was convenient to believe," Eliza corrected. "What let you avoid responsibility for selling me to solve father's debts." "That's harsh." "It's accurate, and I'm done softening truth to make other people comfortable." She left them with their tea and their regrets. Catherine she stayed in contact with. Her sister had found work as a teacher and seemed happier than Eliza had ever seen her. Vivienne she saw occasionally. Her cousin had moved to Manchester, was writing under a pseudonym about women's rights. They'd never be close again, but there was a kind of peace between them. "I don't expect forgiveness," Vivienne said at their last meeting, "but I hope you can accept that I'm trying to be better." "I can accept that," Eliza said. "Good luck, Vivienne. I mean that." The marriage to Rowan evolved slowly. They learned each other's rhythms, habits, irritations. fought occasionally, made up awkwardly, developed private jokes and shared routines. It wasn't the sweeping romance novels promised. It was better, real and complicated, and theirs. One evening, nearly a year after the trial, they sat on their usual bench watching the sunset. "I've been thinking," Rowan said. "Dangerous." He smiled. "About this marriage. When we started, it was purely practical. Protection and convenience." "I remember. But it's become something else, something I didn't expect." He took her hand. "I love you, Eliza. I don't know when it happened exactly, somewhere between the trial and now, between learning to live with you and learning I don't want to live without you." She felt warmth spread through her chest. "You're terrible at romantic declarations." "I know. I'm out of practice. Lucky for you, I prefer honest over romantic." She squeezed his hand. "I love you too. And yes, I know when it happened. It was in the courtroom when you said you'd rather have a partner who challenges you than one who obeys. That's when I knew. That was almost a year ago. I'm a slow processor." They kissed as the sun dropped below the horizon, painting the sky in impossible colors. When they pulled apart, Eliza felt something settle completely into place. Not perfection, but rightness. 2 years later, Sarah Mitchell published a book about the case. It became required reading for reformers and legal scholars, cited in arguments for changing laws about women's rights and mental competency. Eliza's story, their story, became a touchstone. She and Rowan gave the occasional interview, always stressing that they'd been lucky, that the system had worked for them through a combination of good lawyers, brave witnesses, and a fair judge, that not every woman would have these advantages, which is why the system needs to change, Eliza told one reporter, so that justice doesn't depend on luck. They had a daughter first, then a son. Raised them to question authority, to speak up, to believe that saying no was just as powerful as saying yes. Taught them that marriage should be partnership, not ownership. Sometimes Eliza thought about the life she'd escaped. Years married to Edmund, slowly disappearing into the role he'd chosen for her. It felt like a nightmare she'd woken from just in time. Other times she thought about the moment on that London street when she'd climbed out of her wedding carriage and walked away from everything she'd been raised to accept. The most terrifying decision of her life. Also, the best. On their 5th anniversary, Rowan gave her a painting he'd done. The view from their bedroom window, ocean and cliffs, an endless sky. "It's how I see you," he said. "Wild and untamable and beautiful. That's still terrible at romance. And you still love me anyway." "I do." She kissed him. "Against all odds and common sense, I absolutely do." They hung the painting above the fireplace in the study, where it caught the afternoon light and turned the ocean colors to jewels. Sometimes Eliza stood in front of it, remembering the girl who'd run from her wedding in a dress that cost a fortune, who'd had no plan except escape. That girl had become this woman, married on her own terms, living a life she'd chosen, changing laws one case at a time through testimony and advocacy, and refusing to be silent. She'd walked away from a gilded cage and into uncertainty, and discovered that uncertainty, terrifying as it was, beat certainty that killed your soul. The ocean crashed against the cliffs below, constant and wild and honest, just like she'd promised herself she would be. And every day, standing at the window of Blackmore Hall, watching the water that never stopped moving, Eliza Blackmore, who'd once been Eliza Thornfield, and was she exactly who she'd chosen to become, felt grateful for the courage that had changed everything. She'd rewritten her own story, and in doing so, had shown others they could rewrite theirs. That was worth every scandal, every fight, every moment of fear, because some cages, no matter how gilded, were never worth the price of freedom. And some decisions, however terrifying, were always right.